order. 7:02. I'll read a land acknowledgement. So, as visitors on this land, the town of Bradford, Gwillimbury acknowledges the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Shinnecock Nation, which includes Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, collectively known as Three Fires Confederacy. We recognize the Huron-Wendat, Chippewa, and Haudenosaunee nations have walked on this territory over time. In times of great change, we recognize more than ever the importance of honoring Indigenous history and culture and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation, respect, and good health with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. So thank you for joining us tonight. We have a public meeting, two items on the agenda tonight. So I'll have a recommendation that the special council meeting dated February 11, 2025 be adopted as printed. Moved by Councillor Dykey, seconded by Councillor Kike. All in favor? Carried, thank you. We have regrets sent by Councillor Dehaney. She's unable to attend tonight, and regrets by Councillor Scott. He's on business in Montreal. Okay, declaration of pecuniary interest, general nature. If you have a pecuniary interest or general nature, you can declare now or when the issue comes up. At this point in time, seeing none. We are moving into a public meeting. Application for official plan and zoning bylaw amendments. So, item 4.1, introduction, purpose of the meeting. This meeting is a statutory public meeting held pursuant to section 17, 22, and 34 of the Planning Act to discuss amendments to the official plan and zoning bylaw 2010-050. The town has received applications that have been deemed complete under the Planning Act and is therefore required to hold a public meeting as part of the application review process. Members of the public will be given an opportunity to speak following the staff presentation. Comments presented at the public meeting are being recorded by staff. Personal information is being recorded in accordance with the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Questions regarding the collection and use of personal information should be directed to the clerk. We have our first public meeting, 4.2, Public Information Zoning Bylaw Amendment from Issarock Building Corporation, address 7379 Holland Street West and 23 Church Street. File number D1424-13. So, planning staff will now present the contents of a staff report. Please note the staff report being presented by staff represents the town's initiated proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The presentation by staff will contain an update on comments received to date and does not include a recommendation on the proposal. Town staff will provide a report at a later date, which will also reflect and consider the public comments made during the public meeting and written submissions received before the report is written. The applicant and their representatives will provide a presentation after. So I turn it over to Priscilla. Thank you.
Good evening, councils and members of the public. Thank you for attending this evening's public meeting regarding the zoning bylaw amendment for 7379 Holland Street and 23 Church. Next slide, please. So to start off, I'm just going to provide a summary of what we'll be looking into tonight. So this includes the purpose of the public meeting, the displaying of the public notice, details regarding the applications, the summary of comments received, as well as concluding remarks and the next step in the process. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the public meeting. So right now we're here to present the application to the members of the public as well as council, as well as invite questions and comments for the application. When the application is deemed complete under the Planning Act, it is a requirement to have the public information meeting. At this time, staff has not completed a detailed review of the application and council will not be making a decision tonight. The comments received from the public information meeting as well as the comments from the circulation will be used within a recommendation report. Once this recommendation report is complete, it will be presented to council at a later date. If anyone is interested for comments or would like to know more about the project or receive notice when it comes back to council, please email plan@townofbwg.com and please include your name as well as your address in the email address. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the public notice. As a requirement of the Planning Act, it is required to put a public notice on the property, which was done so facing Church Street as well as Holland Street West. It was published in the Bradford Today as well as on the town website on January 17th, 2025. Additionally, mailouts were given to property owners within 120 meters. Next slide, please. So a bit about the application. So the town has received an application for a zoning bylaw amendment to support a 15-story mixed-use building. This includes 191 residential units, 4 levels of underground parking consisting of 232 parking spaces. Additionally, proposing 2 detached buildings that are listed on the Town Heritage Registry are proposed to be demolished and rebuilt to 400-meter square commercial space and to be adjoined to 15-story building. In between these 2 buildings, a parkette is proposed. The application was submitted by Romanov Architects Incorporated on behalf of the owner, Isrock Building Corporation, and the application was deemed complete on January 8th, 2025. Next slide, please. So about the subject land. So the land itself is outlined in red, and it's located at the northeast intersection of Holland Street West and Church Street. It is approximately 0.3 hectares or 0.74 acres. The site consists of 3 two-stories detached listed heritage buildings with mature trees. In terms of the surrounding properties, at the north and west of the property are residential dwellings as well as commercial units, and commercial units can also be found on the east and south of the property. Next slide, please. So the following is a street view of the proposed heritage building. So the first image is 23 Church. That will be the building on the left. And on the right is the side of 79 Holland Street West. At the bottom, the image, the picture on the left is 79 Holland Street West, and on the right would be 73. Next slide, please. So the following is a picture of the site plan being proposed. The main building is at the center of the site plan. It is the 15-story that's being proposed. The vehicle access is proposed at the north end of the building, which would have access to the loading dock as well as the 4 stories underground parking. At the front of the property, more specifically at the southwest and at the southeast, are the heritage buildings that will be converted into commercial uses. In between those buildings is the parkette that's being proposed. And I should mention that the pedestrian access is also along Holland Street West. On the next slide, you will see the proposed rendering for the building shown at different angles. And on the next slide is the close-up of the heritage buildings that are being proposed, where the materials from the original heritage building is said to be will be incorporated within the new commercial buildings. And next slide, please. The following is an extract of the official plan, where it shows that it is located within an urban area, more specifically within the downtown Bradford. There is a height designation for this area to be between 2 and 6 stories, but there is a provision within the official plan that identifies that it can go for zoning bylaw as long as the council is satisfied that appropriate community benefits as described in the bonusing provision of the official plans are met. Within the planning justification report, it was stated by the applicant that the proposed development owner seeks to work with the town to achieve a bonusing agreement that can benefit the proposed development and the town visions for the subject area. In the next slide, you will see the zoning bylaw 2010-05 referencing the property itself. Property is zoned as core commercial use. It is permitted varied uses as well as a height of 18 meters and identifies that apartment dwellings are permitted as long as they're above the first floor. The proposal has values that I would say are higher than what is identified within the provision, which includes a maximum height of 49 meters, as well as residential dwellings on the ground level. As such, a zoning bylaw amendment would be required. Next slide, please. So the following slide shows the zoning exceptions that are being requested, which includes 191 parking spaces, 18 visitors parking spaces, 20 parking space for the retail use, minimum required rear yard of 0.4 meters, minimum required interior yard of 1.5, a maximum height of 49 meters, as well as residential dwelling on the ground floor. On the next slide, so the circulation of the application was made on January 8th, and the following is a summary of the comments that has been received thus far. So the comments to date identifying no objections includes Electra and Enbridge. There were standard comments that were received from external agencies, including the county and Simcoe, advising that waste collection services will need to be provided by the owner or the building operator. Southwick Health advised that council that provincial growth policies do not provide for the necessary capital investment to expand hospital fixtures to meet the healthcare needs of new residents, and request council's continued support in fundraising and efforts to support funding approval for the provincial government. The Simcoe Police advised that reasonable and customary access to the rooftop will be required in order to ensure continued and uninterrupted community safety and well-being. There was also comments that were received since the presentations were made. So in terms of the Simcoe County District School Board, as well as the Simcoe-Muskoka Catholic District School Board, they identified they might not be able to accommodate all students from new development within the local school due to accommodation limitations. So on the next slides are the comments that were received from the town of Bradford. Enforcement advised that 232 parking spaces is proposed compared to the required 354 parking spaces. The deficiency will need to be addressed. It was also advised the public parking lot 200 meters away should not be relied for regular parking requirements. The Finance Department identified that payments of outstanding taxes and accounts received will be required. Comments from the Deputy CEO identified that a breakdown of proposed unit tests was requested to understand the parking reduction proposal, and notes that the feasibility of a 4-level underground parking structure should also be evaluated. Legal advised that the properties are deemed heritage and will require the Heritage Committee's recommendation. And additional comments that were received from the Clerk Division advising of the barrier-free parking requirement. In terms of public comments, a couple were received since the presentation was prepared. Concerns include the height of the proposal. Several individuals identified that it was too high, and the proposed height would fundamentally change the area. There was also concerns in terms of parking reduction, and that could result in overflow parking into neighboring commercial parking spaces. Additionally, in terms of construction, they believe they would have disruption to neighboring business and ask that compensation be provided to those businesses. In conclusion, for any members of the public who would like to comment or would like to keep up to date with this application, please send an email to plan@townofbwg.com. The owner, as well as the agent, is currently in attendance this evening and will be able to answer any questions. But at this point, I would like to invite the owner and agent to introduce themselves as well as provide their presentation. Following this presentation, the floor will be open for questions. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much for that, Priscilla. Appreciate that. Yes, now we'll invite the applicant and representative if they'd like to come up and add to the presentation by our staff. Just, John, just turn around, put the mic on, and address everybody through the mic so everybody can hear, because we're on YouTube also. It's the button, John. There you go.
Okay. Sorry. Architect for the project, John Romanov, and also planner for the project, Michael Fry. I'll just go briefly through the project. I think the planning department did a great presentation of the basically functional aspects of the project. Next slide, please. So I think what I wanted to express is that the driving sort of design elements for the project, and really what we were striving to do with the project, was to maintain the two listed buildings on Holland Street, and create a backdrop to those two buildings with the new structure, with the new building built behind them. And then by doing so, to create that sort of public parquet in between the two existing buildings and then the entrance into the apartment building. So realize that that people have concerns with the height, but by stepping the building back substantially from the street line in behind the existing two houses, we've set back from the street substantially more than what the bylaw would usually allow, and also step backs in the facade as we go up. So although visually the building is tall from the street, you would perceive typically only 8 stories in height, and then the top levels would recede back. Next slide, please. So the two houses that we're maintaining, 73 and 79 Holland, together with the other buildings to the east, create a nice streetscape and ensemble. So again, we wanted to maintain that characteristic of Holland Street at this location and to emphasize those two existing houses, which although we're not maintaining the houses physically intact, we are intending to rebuild them so that they are physically almost identical to what is there now. And those two houses, as was mentioned, would be converted into commercial uses with the residential set in behind that. The residential that we're proposing at the ground floor level would basically be fronting along Church Street with 2-story units and having direct access off Church Street. So the idea is to animate Church Street with access to residential units at that location. And then we also have residential units on the ground floor level facing to the east and to the north. The setback at the rear, although it seems very small of 0.4 meters, that's actually to the ramp that leads to the underground garage. So the building itself is actually set back over 8 meters from the north property line. And similarly with the setback to the east, that's a setback to some balcony areas. So the actual setback is over 3 meters to the building face. Next slide, please. So again, the two houses, 79, 73 Holland Street, and their location in the plan on the upper right, maintaining the location where they are currently, but incorporating them into a public plaza. Next slide, please. So this is a bit of a wonky looking photo montage, but basically just to give a sense of how the building is set back from Holland Street, and then the two existing houses being that forecourt to the building and creating that urban plaza. Next slide, please. So again, similar slides to what was shown by the planning department, but again indicating that forecourt plaza in front of the building. Next slide. This just goes through some of the variances that we were looking for, or for requirements for the rezoning. As far as the parking goes, we've allocated 1 parking stall per suite in the project. And it's been our experience. We're also working on the project just to the west of this Holland House project. There we have 1.5 parking spaces per suite. However, only about 10% of the suites sold have requested 2 parking spots, so, or more than 1 parking spot. So, and the suites in this building, most of them are 1 bedroom plus den. So the feeling is that 1 parking spot per suite should be more than adequate for the residents that will be purchasing here. And the 18 or 0.1 visitor parking spots are, again, in relationship to this building being more central to the downtown area, more in a walkable zone. And again, we feel that that provides adequate parking for visitors. The 20 parking stalls for the commercial is as per the bylaw at 1 per 20 square meters. Next slide. So in conclusion, I think some people can say we're pushing the envelope, but I think that in relationship to some of the public provisions that we're making with the two existing buildings and the public plaza, and sort of the overall urban design presentation that we're striving for on this project, I feel that it would be a very well-received project once it's completed to the downtown core. Also bringing obviously a lot of residents to the downtown core and making sure that the downtown stays viable in the long run, with residents living in the proximity and walkable to all of the facilities that the downtown offers and can offer more in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, John. Appreciate that. Any further comments?
Oh, yes, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Michael Fry. I'm a land use planner. And John's correct with regards to the intent and purpose behind this development to bring residents downtown. Certainly, thank you. John is correct in his comment that he would like to bring residents to the downtown area. Intensification is important. It's important because, not just because the province says it's important, but it's important because we're facing a climate crisis and we need to stop building on the outside of our cities. And this is one of those opportunities to do just that, to bring residents downtown and give opportunity for more affordable housing and more intensification to an area that already has existing services, and not just municipal services. We're talking transit facilities, we're talking commercial facilities, we're talking healthcare facilities. The more people you bring into your downtown, the more viable your downtown is. And I know that because I've been a planner for 20 years, and I recognize how important it is that we intensify in the areas that we can. And just a quick couple of notes on intensification and land use policy. The County of Simcoe official plan recognizes that the growth areas are to occur inside the urban boundaries, particularly Bradford downtown. The property is within the built boundary, so it's recognized as infill and intensification. And though we don't have the growth plan anymore, the provincial planning statement recognizes the same intent that we need to intensify our downtowns, and this does just that. The Bradford official plan, of course, identifies this as an intensification area, and that's exactly what the intent is behind development. A couple of notes on policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further to add, or? Okay. So then I will now turn it over to the public portion of this meeting. So thank you, gentlemen. So members of the public are now invited to address council and provide any comments and ask questions. Please provide your name and speak directly into the microphone. If residents have a prepared written submission that they are reading from, please submit that to the clerk upon completion of your presentation. So I will now call out any members of the public who would like to speak in regards of this planning process. Are we going through the list? Okay. Okay, everybody signed up? Okay, well, we'll go with the list. So we have our first speaker, Laura Martin.
Good evening, Your Worship, Mayor Leduc, Deputy Raj, Deputy Mayor Sandhu, and members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Laura Martin. Some of you know me, some of you may not. I've been here since 1989, so since I sucked in math, I'm sure all I'll say is it's been a long time. And I'm here to voice my opinion on agenda item 4.2, or plan 2025-7, the corner of Church and Holland. Now, I probably won't be around when this complex is complete, but I'd like to offer my opinion nonetheless. Since moving here, I've seen the population grow considerably. There were 2,500 people when I moved here. I don't even want to guess what the population is today, but what I can tell you is that some of that population is aging. Seniors that find themselves having to sell their home because of children moving away, spouses passing away, or just the cost of upkeep. Now, referring to the building on Holland and Church, my first thought was, you've got to be kidding me. How can you put a 15-story building on a corner and you're going to put these heritage houses in the front? Now, for me, it does not have a very aesthetic value. When I'm looking at this building, when I'm looking at the concept, it's out of place. It looks out of place. That's all I can say about that. Now, from what I understand, reading the policy 1.4.3 housing on page 73, subsection A. Now, the rent, now I'm not sure, I'm not clear if these are condos or apartments or whatever they're going to be. Does that mean, according to that policy, that it will depend on the type of municipality study it falls under to determine whether it's affordable? Now, whose definition of affordable are we using? I know my definition is totally different than what I've been seeing as affordable in this town. Now, also, the construction for this building, I live in the building next to it. Everybody knows Lamar's Pizza, okay? I live above that building. Now, we only have one entrance to our building. Now, when construction starts on this, how are we supposed to get into our building? Dump trucks, whatever, are going to be using access on Church. You're not going to take up Holland, I'm sure. So what are we supposed to do? Now, if this happens in the summer, I'm certainly not opening my windows. First of all, I don't want to hear it. Secondly, the dust. This is going to create a lot of problems for the people who already live in that area. And I don't think it's a reasonable place to put it, honestly. And as far as the rental goes, I can't see it being affordable. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Staff record questions, and if they can answer some of them, we'll ask them to come back up and answer some of the questions after. Okay, so my next speaker, I have Sam Timpen. State your name and address, and just press the big button on the front. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Sam Timpano. I'm a resident at 95 Holland Street West. It's that strip retail plaza that's going to be across from where you guys propose to put the building. So I have some items I want to go through with it. Number one was probably brought up already, but visitors parking. I don't think we have that the building is going to provide enough visitors parking. What we have here is, like when we had this carrot festival and Santa Claus and all that comes to, we get an overflow of traffic, of parking inside our parking lot area. And a lot of it is designated for residents. And what I've noticed then during those times, and sometimes even I can't find parking to even park my own vehicle, to go into my house, into my apartment, which I pay enough money, right? So that kind of peeves me off, and I have a suspicion that this is what's going to happen. People are going to be visiting other people. They're not going to be parking. The visitors it's not going to be ample. Okay, so that would be one of my first concerns. Another thing is the way that the building is positioned. Like right now, I enjoy the sun when it comes out in the east, and I have a feeling that this is going to overcast the building, and we're not going to get a lot of sun. I won't be able to grow my tomatoes on the balcony and so forth. Okay, so it's important to me. There's going to be an overshadow. This whole building is going to be like cold at all best times, unless it's coming from the west, and then you lose it. Third of all, street congestion. It's already it's a 2-lane street, and they can't expand it. And so the problem is, and people are parking where they're not supposed to be parking during those rush hour times. It's already congested when I come home from that area, from Green Lanes. It's already back to Bathurst Street. Could you imagine we're going to add so many more units in place? And where's the traffic going to end? You know, and also too, in light of that, in that area as well, where it's going to, the building's going to be located, I believe there's been a few accidents where pedestrians have been killed or hurt in that area, and that's why the lights have been pushed back for that reason. And I have concerns there, major concerns, whether or not you know, people are going to get hurt. There's going to be a lot more traffic, more congestion. And the streets are not designed for that influx of population. So that's another concern. As was previously mentioned, noise congestion, noise complaints. This project is not going to, I don't know how fast they build these buildings, but probably maybe a couple of years, I would say, before, and then people, and maybe more, because as buildings are made, there's going to be problems, and they're, you know, and all that. And I get the idea why you want to build it here is because the utilities are already there, but we got a massive amount of land, and I'm sure they can find some other place. And I agree with my fellow person that was here, my first speaker. The building is it's awful. The design to me is not even appealing at all. Also, I've also noticed a lot of water reduction pressure. I don't know if city is allowed for that. I don't see a new water tower put up anywhere. Since the population has increased, I've been here for 10 years. Since the population has increased, I noticed the water pressure has gone down drastically. I can't even shower anymore. And no, I'm a plumber as well, so I know I changed my fixtures and all that. We've done all kinds of work at the building as well. And my landlady could contest to that I've done some plumbing work and stuff like that, HVAC as well. So pressures, when we have this many people, is there accommodation for that? Okay, so that'd be something of concern. 15 levels, like, what are we building here? You know, how many people do we expect to like, why downtown Toronto or downtown Bradford? Well, maybe it is Toronto. Who knows, right? What are we getting at here? Okay, and then you're talking about, okay, so we talked about the injuries. Radio frequencies, is there going to be problem interference with all these antennas up there? And then you're talking about there's not enough hospitals or schools or to accommodate these people. So why are we building something that we can't accommodate schools? Like, should we be building this? And I understand it's expensive to build schools and all that, but where are we going to put them? We're going to transport them out of Bradford to other schools, more congestion, more, you know, taxpayers' money. I don't think the parking requirements are met with that many visitors park, and we know how that's going to work out. You're going to have tenants; they base it on a certain percentage of per unit. Look, everybody likes to drive, right? You go. I mean, we have transit here, which is great, but not everybody works within the city. Everybody's got it, and a lot of times the GO Trans is not reliable enough. There's always some breakdowns or whatever. People drive as a habit here, so I can't see everybody just having X amount of cars per unit. So that's concerning. And the visitors' parkings they're going to make allowances for parking in visitors where there should be visitors parking. And so that would be the meat and potatoes of what I would have to say. The only thing is I want to ask, like, and it was brought up, are these condos going to be rentals? They're going to be, if it goes through, I hope it doesn't. And is there going to be Airbnbs allowed in there? Is there going to be a lot of hollering and yelling out of the balconies at night so I can't even enjoy my evenings? You know, that's a concern. If it's condos and they own the properties, and are they going to be owners? Are they going to be allowed to rent out or whatever? These are the things we need questions for. I don't know if anybody has an answer to that, but
We'll
okay.
try and provide some of those answers at the end.
Thank
If you
you.
don't mind. Thank you very much. Okay. Next speaker we have is Wanda LeBlanc.
Good evening, council members. My name is Wanda LeBlanc, and I am the landlord of 95 Holland Street West, where everyone knows Lamar's Pizza, Antoinette's Laundrette. That's my building, of which I am extremely proud. My family has owned that building since 1976. My dad did not build the building. We bought it at the age of 3 years old, so it was new to us. I don't know how it was built. There's no architectural drawings. There's no geo reports for the land. I have no idea. But I can say that with the rumble and the construction being so close to my building, it will definitely have an adverse effect on my foundations, on the basement walls, and that's very concerning for me. As you heard from my, which I thank very much, I have a couple of tenants that have already spoken. And again, traffic. I cannot fathom how it would work out with even if it's a one-bedroom condo, if it's a couple and they have a couple of cars, like the traffic, Holland Street and Church Street cannot handle that volume. It doesn't work. And also for all the years that it will take, and it will take a lot of years to put a building of that size, my commercial tenants will definitely be affected. Nobody will drive down Holland Street to avoid a dump truck, to avoid construction, to avoid cranes. They will not patronize the commercial tenants that I have in my building. So what are they going to say to me? I'm sorry, I can't pay my rent this month because I haven't made enough money. So my question is, where is the compensation, number one, for me, so that I can in turn compensate my commercial tenants? Because they will be adversely affected. Also, with the residential tenants, it's been brought up, I only have one entrance into the parking lot. What's going to happen when you've got 10 dump trucks coming out with all the soil that they want to go 4 levels down? You know what kind of a hole that is? How are my tenants going to get home? I have people that work days, nights. There's no set time that, okay, we're going to stop construction at 4:30. The world of construction doesn't work that way. So how are these people going to come home? And how are they going to reasonably enjoy their home? I know Bradford is growing, and I know that there is demand for housing, although this doesn't give me the idea that it's going to be affordable. But I'm just at a loss to understand how this would work, this kind of density. So I hope you will consider that vision. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Next speaker I have is Pierre Paulette. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks for doing this. My thoughts and concerns really echo, I'm sorry, Pierre Palat. A little background, I've lived on Scanlon Avenue for 25 years, so I'm very acquainted with the downtown core and am still waiting for some real downtown development. So on one hand, you like to see some development, but then like 15 stories of it all in one shot, that seems a little bit ambitious. Now, my concerns really reflect and echo the previous people. They are totally legitimate concerns. I can understand that. My biggest concern is parking. Already it's congested down there. Where are these people going to park? 191 parking spots inside for 191 units. It just seems really ridiculous. That's, I can't even think you think that that would be acceptable. Okay. Also, how, like, okay, so I drove here from Scanlon, drove across John Street. All the parking lots were full. Everything was full already. So, like, where are these people going to go? Where are they going to park? Also, too, we have a downtown revitalization project being proposed somewhere along the line here. I don't know where it sits. But how is that going to be affected as well? For parking, for new businesses? I understand more people downtown will help some of the businesses. However, where's the parking and the infrastructure that can handle it? I hope you take that under consideration.
Thank you for those comments. Okay. Next up, I have Helen Crocker.
Good evening, Council. I agree with everything that I've heard others say, but I'm going to talk about something that hasn't been addressed. And that's what and that's what it will be like for the people who live next to this development. Because I live across the street from the Loft building, and I can tell you, I can assure you, since last April, it's been a challenge. A big project like that on a small piece of land, you have cranes, you have dump trucks, you have noise. If you don't have electricity, you need generators. It starts at 7 o'clock in the morning, bang. Now, the Loft is great. They finish at a reasonable time, usually between 3 and 5. But there's bright lights in order for them to light up the building area, which impacts the people who live across the street. So I've lived with it now for 10.5 months, and it has impacted my life. It has changed the quality of my life. And I feel that a 15-story building, it certainly needs the intensification, but you're forgetting about the people who already live in the community, who pay tax dollars, I've lived here for 35 years. I love Bradford. It's my home, and I'm proud of it. But I hope as a council, you will think about us as well. Not just, okay, we have to meet this government mandate, and we have to intensify. I love the idea of change. I love the idea of Bradford turning into a great community, but let's respect what we have and what people value. I can say that we love the Lamar's Pizza. We've been going there since they started. When you're on Church and you're trying to make a left-hand turn onto Holland Street, because of the lights, it's so challenging. So if you have another 191 units, how are you going to handle that? Already, because of those lights and because of the lights at the four corners, I mean, I use this every day. It's already a big problem. The traffic is backed up to the lights. And sometimes you have to wait to get through at the four corners, right? Because it's so busy. So I ask you to think about all of that. And the architect for the project talked about how it's set back and how it'll be pleasing for Holland Street. Well, what about the people who have small bungalows, who've lived there forever on John Street? What are they looking at? And as far as the shadow effect, a 15-story building, they're not going to get sun. Do we have a shadow effect bylaw in Bradford to protect us residents from that? So if you could kindly think about those things, I would appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments. All right, I have Gilbert Hamilton next.
Good evening, members of council. Gilbert Hamilton. I live at 71 Compton Crescent in Bradford. I too am surprised by the look of this type of a proposal, and I often feel like we have zoning bylaws for a reason, and when we just ignore them and change them and do things differently, suddenly we don't have bylaws and it's a free-for-all and people can build what they want where they want. That's the whole reason for zoning bylaws in the first place, is to try to maintain a certain aesthetic or a certain group of buildings together and things like that. And this one clearly doesn't seem to fit that generic. Anyway, we also have a heritage buildings, and we designate heritage buildings, and then we tear them down and knock them over and say, oh well. So why do we bother to have a heritage committee? I think it's great that we do. I wish we could save more of our heritage buildings within the town. And it seems a shame to trample on those things also. I agree with all these people with the comments regarding the intensification. That's a lot of people in a very small, compact area. I don't believe that those streets or those areas were meant to handle that kind of a load. And you have to wonder if you're thinking of family dwellings or affordable homes for families. I don't see how one-bedroom apartments fill that need. It doesn't seem to me like that's where families are attempting to settle in what is supposed to be affordable, likely won't be by the opinion of most of the people that need them. That's what I got.
Okay, thank you also for those comments. Next up, I have Nelson Brasso.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and councillors. My name is Nelson Brosso. I live at 130 Kilkenny Trail in Bradford. Resident of Bradford for my whole life. I've owned a building on the main street. I ran a business on the main street, and I too am very surprised that the town would even consider an eyesore in the downtown core like this. First of all, the 19 meter to 49 meter. I mean, has anybody ever challenged the bylaw 2.5 times? I mean, that seems a little ridiculous. It'll be definitely an eyesore. I can't believe, is the town planner here, by the way? No? Is there? He's here? Okay. Curious what his opinion is on this. So that, very drastic, an eyesore, doesn't fit with what the downtown should look like as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, a lot of people. There's also been downtown revitalization drawings over the years done very professionally by urban planners, people in the know. I have never seen any plan showing a huge building amongst all the other small buildings. So to me, it makes no sense. Again, as people have said, infrastructure, the downtown streets, the infrastructure of the downtown does not support a building like this. Unless you guys have plans of widening the streets, no idea how you're going to do that, or trying to increase flow in any way, it will not support. As the previous lady said, I've tried to turn left on Holland Street off Church more than once. It's a nightmare. So now you're adding another, I don't know how many cars coming out of that building every day. To me, disaster. Parking, again, not sufficient. Like, they don't really check off really any box here. They want so many changes made for one project, in my opinion. Yeah, so basically, my concerns are traffic flow, the looks, the aesthetics of the building, and how that does not, to my opinion, does not suit the look of the downtown at all. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Next, I have Miguel Mateo.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and all of council. I've moved here in Bradford in February this past year, and it's really nice around here. It's very, just to say it quite frankly, pretty chill. And but after hearing about this whole matter of this building, one thing I'd like to point out is that I understand that this building project, that at the end of the day, it's all just business. It's all about money. And when it comes to the term affordable housing, that's when the definition of affordable housing, it varies to a lot of people, just as a lady here has mentioned, which is a good point. So like $2,000 plus, that's only affordable housing to someone who makes a six-figure income. But the thing is, at the end of the day, we got to think about the long run. You know, people need to go to get to their jobs. You know, we have to think about the traffic. And we got to consider also, especially the emergency vehicles, when you need to get into the parking lot of an apartment building. It's no joke. And yes, there is a demand for housing to get these developers to come. It's obvious. But you gotta work with the people, the taxpayers, the people that pay our taxes, who live here in Bradford. These are the people who have you guys voted in the position you guys are doing. And people need to get to their jobs without having to get through traffic congestion. People need to get to their jobs. Because at the end of the day, from their side, it's all about money. They need to get to be able to pay their rent, to pay their taxes, to pay all the needs. And there has to be also the same for, as I mentioned, emergency vehicles, because that's a serious issue. If somebody needs the ambulance to come, how's the ambulance going to come through in the middle of a congested traffic? It makes no sense, and there's no logic to it. Or if a police officer needs to come with this cruiser, and somebody's getting beaten up, or other situations, these are serious issues got to consider. Because at the end of the day, these things can happen to anybody. So we have to consider the long run with the construction, where if you guys are going to do this, work with the people. Don't just work with the business people, the CEOs and all these other corporate guys. That's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker is Nicholas Ingoglia. Okay. Okay, so I've been through the list of speakers that signed up, but if anybody came in that didn't sign up, I would invite you to the table. So if you want to come, sir, just give us your name and provide your name and address. And
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. A lot has been said. Joe Van Dyke, 62 Hurd Street. Couple thoughts in regards to where the town would like to progress in the future. If this building does go ahead, does the fire department have the capabilities to go up 15 stories? Or is the town going to purchase new fire equipment and training and the costs of that associated? I don't know what the fire department's limitations are right now in regards to height-wise. And number two, Bradford, if we do progress with this building, would follow in the footsteps of most major, mid to major size towns, cities in Canada, if not around the world. Once something is allowed, the next building will be 10 meters, 15 meters taller. So are we looking at all of Holland Street, this setting a precedent being 15 stories plus for all of Holland Street West? And is that something that the town in the long term desires? And if the town desires that, then so be it. But there is, as you've heard, a lot of ramifications or upgrades needed if that's the route that council and the town sees Bradford of being 15 to 40-story buildings from the Four Corners to the 400. And that's all I'd have to say. Thank you for your time.
thank you for those comments. So I invite anybody else, if they haven't spoken, if they'd like to speak on behalf of this project. Okay, just state your name and address, please.
Good evening, Council. Mike Vecchio, 2 Countryside Court in Bradford. So I'm trying to understand the logic. I wasn't here for this purpose, and I'm kind of glad I came, but I'm trying to understand the logic behind this. You're adding that many units to a core area that has issues with transportation parking to begin with. I back onto the 8th line, which at one point was considered Bradford's bypass for trucking and for vehicles, and it's gotten busy. I know there's plans to extend. Neither here nor there. But we've got a bypass situation already in place for a congested area that can't handle the parking or the congestion it has now. We've got absolutely no options to widen these roads. And now everybody's praising a highway that takes congestion away from the 8th line and Holland Street. So we're planning on repeating the same problem by adding congestion to Holland Street. I don't quite understand it. If there's issues on the 8th line, everybody takes Holland Street to get across. Got issues with people going from the 400 to Green Lane, commuting for work already. I've done a lot of high-rise. I've seen a lot of stuff. I can tell you right now, we've got parking bylaws in place. During construction, nobody cares. You're going to have a crane probably overhanging the building. They're going to propose to take out one lane of Holland Street for transportation of goods or the crane overhanging. We're limiting a limited area, not just during construction, but for the most part, construction is just going to be a disaster. There's no way around Church Street. Holland Street going towards the 400 is just going to be a disaster. It already is. Like the light situation, I was just looking at it on Google. The light situation that we have on Holland Street at that intersection, it seems to be a liability to me to begin with. And now we're going to be confining that space by reducing lanes, and the logistics just doesn't work for that area. I'd like to see the impact on On our electricity grid, I'd like to see the impact on draining. I know for a fact new buildings go in, everybody around gets hit with power issues because you know what? They're welding, they're drawing power from the crane, there's a lot going on. So it is going to affect the residents now in that area negatively. There's such an impact to a project this size. And listen, I've worked in 82-story buildings. This isn't new to me. 15 isn't high. It's high for the area. It's the demand on the zone we're talking about doesn't seem sustainable to me. So I'm just trying to wonder, I know it is a numbers game. I know we need more tax revenue on the town. It's an eyesore for where it's proposed. Logistically, I don't understand how it's going to work. I've got negative thoughts about it to begin with. And I can tell you right now, for a construction company going through the logistics of dropping off material and stuff like that, nobody cares about your parking bylaws. They're going to do it anyways. You're going to find that's the cost of doing business. What is the cost of doing business? At what point do we have enough of the cost of doing business impacting the residents of the town? That's the line I'm curious about. The parking, I can tell you right now, just from being downtown all the time, it's not enough spaces compared to the units. One parking space allotted to what I can only imagine with, 181 units. They're going to be closet sized to begin with, but one parking space, we're a commuter town. So if I were to move into one of these units with my wife, I have to commute. She's going to have to commute to her job. How does one parking space each actually make sense? How can we allot to that? I think we're going to have drainage issues. I know I'm all over the map, but I wasn't even planning on speaking. I think we're going to have drainage issues. You're going 4 stories down for parking levels in a confined space. I work on elevators. All that water goes into the pit. There's floods all the time. What are we doing to prevent this stuff? What does it mean to our grid? What does it mean to, like somebody was saying, water pressure? What does this mean to the whole picture? Because at some point, tax revenue is good, but what's the cost of it? So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for those comments. Okay, last call for anybody that didn't sign up that might want to speak on this project. Okay. Seeing none. Okay, I will I'll now invite planning staff back up to answer any questions if you have any responses to any of these concerns that were brought forward.
Thank you, everyone, for all the comments that provided. It was quite informative in terms of your perspective when it comes to this project. I've been taking notes throughout all these comments, and we'll be sure to provide the comments within the report that we're providing to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now I invite council to ask a few questions. So I'll start with Councillor Verkuyk. Councillor Fergini next.
I don't have any, I don't think I have any questions, just comments. We have zoning bylaws for a reason. And we have parking requirements in the zoning bylaws, and this doesn't even come close. We have height restrictions, supposed to be 6 stories, and they want to put 15 stories in. I haven't seen any compelling reason to support this. I know we need intensification. I know we need to grow up and not grow out. And I ran on protecting farmland, so I do want density in the downtown core, and I think we can have some density, like especially closer to the GO station, but I just don't get this one. It's just 250% height, and the parking meets 65% of the zoning bylaw. So come back with something more reasonable.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fergini, Deputy Mayor.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you for everybody who came out tonight to voice your concerns, to see the presentation. Thank you to the staff who went through the whole presentation, even the applicant who came forward. When I first looked through this proposal, I felt it was extremely aggressive. we actually had conversations about our downtown core, and we talked about higher heights on either end, but not in the actual downtown core. That's why we had set it around that six level height. So to go asking for 15 is quite aggressive. I agree with a lot of the comments here tonight that it does not suit the area whatsoever. We talk about how we want to have more affordable housing. We want to have more options for people to have housing. I get the idea behind it. You're on a transit line, you're in the downtown, you're walkable to the plazas that are there, so you can do your shopping, you can eat, you can do your eating there. Everything's nice and close by, so I get that part of it. But when it comes to the difference in the asks of the bylaws that are currently put in place, it's far too aggressive. When you're talking one parking lot per unit, regardless of what was shown at the Holland House, one is not acceptable. And if you turn around and say yes to something like this, now you set a precedent for anything else that comes to town. They will say, well, you gave them the one spot, so where's our one spot? So I do not agree with that whatsoever. In regards to the way that it looks, a little different. We did talk about keeping things somewhat similar to the surrounding neighborhood to keep that nice feel of the downtown core. So is it a little bit ultra modern? Yeah. To be honest with you, I didn't mind the renderings too much. I know a lot of people didn't like it. I didn't mind it, could use some tweaking. I do like the fact that the historical buildings were actually used and accommodated within the design. I didn't like, though, that it was those two pieces were the only commercial part, the commercial aspect of it. The whole bylaw states that there's no, the commercial is on the first floor, and yet they changed it so that they have more residential even on the first floor, and just the two heritage buildings would have been the commercial part. So I don't agree with that part of it either. There's a lot of work to this, and in regards to the downtown revitalization, it's a plan that obviously has been talked about for a long time. We had plans come forward in renderings. If anybody remembers the renderings, the whole plan was actually to taper Holland Street. It wasn't actually to make it wider. You can't make it wider. So it was going to go down in this section alone. It was going to go from the 4 lanes down to 2 because it wanted to just have people walking. They wanted more walking pedestrian traffic and having patios outside of restaurants. So to stick another 191 units in there without a proper, we do have a transit system in town, but it's not city. This is city built. This is meant for a city. This is not meant for the town of Bradford, this plan. To the gentleman who spoke last in regards to seeing how things work out, you really triggered one of my thoughts too, was because Holland House hasn't been built yet. Holland House, we did the groundbreaking photos for that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. I can't, 4 years ago. Hasn't even put a shovel in the ground yet. I want to see what the ramifications are of that part. Like, that's across from the Shoppers Drug Mart, and they have the 4 open lanes. They don't have the parking on the sides of the roads. So here we can actually see how a project like this would take place with the cranes and the deliveries and everything like that before you go ahead and stick it right in the downtown core. So it'd be nice to see what we're dealing with first before we start looking at bigger projects like this one. But those are my comments, and it'll be interesting to see what comes back to us.
Okay, I've got Deputy Mayor Sandu, and then I've got Councillor Giordano and Councillor Dykey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to thank Ms. Land and John for their presentations, and especially the residents that came out and shared their concerns and provided suggestions. I don't have a problem having density in downtown core. That's where we need to put it. If we can't go into farmland, we need to be within the boundaries. But 15-story is something that I can't support at this time with the current setup. There's lots of valid concerns that are raised tonight, going from grid. There was one that spoke about having the proper equipment, fire equipment, for this size building. Thank you for bringing that up. Traffic, we already know. Construction chaos, that happens with every construction, and this will be no different. How they manage it, that's what needs to be seen. And if this goes through, we need to do a excellent job from the town side that it is not abused, that it's managed properly. But 15 stories is a bit too much. I know we always say, let's make it transit friendly. We don't need that many parking spots, but I agree with my colleague's comments. We're a commuter town. We go out. Yeah, if we can jump on a GO train and go somewhere to work, but that's adding 2-3 hours to the travel time. Someone that's working an 8-hour shift and needs to get to a factory, they can't get on and go somewhere and then wait for another 45 minutes. It's not by, just by leisure that they're having 2 or 3 vehicles. It's a necessity. It's to put food on their table that they need to have 2 vehicles. And the parking is something that I also have a concern. So I'm not going to repeat all the concerns that were raised. I think they're very valid. I hope our staff and the consultants take it back and work on these. But I think it'll be a good addition to that site, but not at what's proposed.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Councilor Giordano? Becky?
Yeah, I always enjoy these types of meetings because I'm a bit of a construction junkie. Like it's a lot of fun, and I want to commend the public because man, there were some fantastic, like really great points. Whether it's the fire or construction protocols when it comes to working on high rise. There was a project in I don't know if you guys know it, called Central Park in New York City. It's 131 stories. You think that this was tough? You should have seen that meeting. Anyways. 2 years ago, some people were complaining about how long it takes to build a project. In Toronto, we're building 54-floor condominiums in about 2 years, from site excavation all the way up to enclosing it. It's very, very possible to build quickly if both the company and the sub-trades are motivated to do so, or incentivized. Whether that's the case for this project, we don't know. But the point is that it doesn't have to be a 5-year project. It could be very quickly for how many stories. The other thing too is, my concern is, and I got the answer, it was condo versus apartment. But the problem is that when you're looking at all one bedrooms, studio apartments or, one bedrooms with a den, with that many units, that's an investor's paradise. So people are going to buy these all up and they're going to rent them out. And they're going to rent them out to other people coming in to stay there, flip them quickly, this and that. And it's not, if we're talking about we want to build communities, and I'm all about growth, but who are we attracting to buy here? If we want the families and the young starter homes and everything else, I don't see this 15 stories full of tiny little units, that type of a starter home. So I have a concern with the overall project because of that. Now, if a developer came and said, listen, I want 15 stories, but I'm redefining the 4 corners. I'm going to put some ground floor, massive commercial. I'm going to have second floor offices, and we're going to go up. I'm like, maybe you could twist my arm, but not where this is right now. I don't see 15 stories being feasible or something that makes a lot of sense. Now I will talk about a couple other things. When I looked at the renderings and everything else, again, through architecture and through design and construction methodology, I looked at the design of it, and it's not a curtain wall of glass. So a lot of the condos that were built in the 90s up until a few years ago, it was just typical flooring all the way up, and then they would wrap it in glass. Talk about the ugliest, most uncharacteristic buildings. What this has, or what I can see, it looks like it has some precast inlays. It has, a little bit of breakup. So there is some architectural value to it. Even though it's modern, it still has, trust me, there's way worse buildings. So I look at this as a pretty decent design. I was curious about the heritage homes because the problem with heritage homes is, they're knocking them down to rebuild. And at first I was like, that's probably the smart thing to do. Kleinberg did that. And the reason is that they kept the facade and the look. But the reason why they tore them down to rebuild is because they're not optimized for anything. They're not ADU compliant. There's the list of problems that those buildings have to try to even maintain for the next few years, never mind trying to operate retail in them. I could see the value of tearing them down and rebuilding them to match the heritage status. I actually think that works. So I'm in support of that component to it. The one thing I'll tell you though is that there's absolutely not enough parking. And I think some of the colleagues spoke about that. When it comes to the retail, especially the ground floor, or I guess the two buildings with the commercial, there's nowhere for people to park. I would love to see all that ground floor. I think you mentioned that as well. All ground floor commercial. I'd like to see more commercial on the main floor, but it has to have the parking. 4 floors underground. The problem when you have retail and you have underground parking is that people are not going to go and pay for parking. This is not Toronto, so we're not going to go down a ramp and then go there and have your meeting or whatever, that retail that's there, and then come back in and come back out. It's not feasible. So if we're gonna, again, I'm all about growth, but if we're gonna support growth, we got to do the right growth. And so I feel like this project has potential, but it has a lot of work to be done. I got a few more notes. I'm just quickly scanning here. One of the other things too is, and this is the challenge that we have as a council, is majority of us are very motivated in protecting our agricultural land. It's a priority for many of us. We can't just build outward, and up is the way to go. 15 stories, too much, especially in that location. So at the end of the day, we got to do some sort of development. It's going to have to be vertical, but again, can't be the 15 stories. At least not in this area. If we were to maybe have the 4 corners and then taper down, or closer to the GO train station, maybe, like I said, maybe I could consider that. But to one of the other residents, it all goes down to your strategy of the design on how we're going to treat the downtown area. And what we're doing right now is we're going to approve a random project here, random project here, random project here, and figure out how does this work? How do we integrate our roads? How do we, I know we've had strategies done, but the strategies don't include this. So it doesn't work. We need a better vision for what our downtown looks like and how that works for our town. So that's something I struggle with as a strategist, is that I'm like, what are we doing here? Because I feel like it's whoever comes forward with a project, like, yeah, sure. No, we need to have a better vision of what this town looks like. And then the last thing is, we've heard some talks about affordable housing. And I just want to kind of clarify, the term affordable housing doesn't make sense, because there's either 2 types of housing. There's market price housing, or there's government subsidized housing. So the only way to make something affordable is to either shrink it down to a tiny little small unit, but no developer is going to invest in building any project for profit unless there's a feasibility scale, right? So there's economies of scale in order to make it feasible. And so what they're going to do is they're going to go 15 stories, smaller units to make it affordable. Well, that to me is not how you build a community. So if you're going to build affordable housing, you get what you pay for sometimes. And so I'm not really a big fan of the term affordable housing for the sake of affordable housing and to try to hit some sort of mandate. I think what we need to do is build a community.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Dykey?
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. First of all the presentation, all the residents that came forward and made your submissions, I commend you all, because what you have said is true. Working in the last 40 years downtown, I've seen traffic increase, and every day I see people running lights, and there's a tremendous amount of traffic that go through the downtown core. Now, the biggest thing, another piece of this puzzle, not only do we have this proposal, but there's another proposal across the road, the old, I call it the old IGA red and white plaza, but that's another building that's going to come in with higher density, and that's going to have a major impact in the downtown core as well. Yes, I want to see some buildings torn down or restructured or rebuilt and add some character to the downtown core, but we have another piece of the puzzle that has been talked about for the last 25 years, and Councillor Ferragini mentioned it. Not 4 lanes. They're talking about moving only 2 lanes through the town of Bradford. So if you think we have congestion now, you wait when this new plan comes in next March or this month, next month, you're going to see a worse scenario even coming. So there's pieces of the puzzle that it's not working with me, and I have some concerns. I commend anybody to buy a building and go through the process and try and fix up and try and improve our downtown core, but we need to tie this in. We have to make a better lifestyle, friendly community, safer transit. It was great that we have a bus system, but at the end of the day, there's so many pieces of the puzzle that we need to study and tie this together. 15 stories is very aggressive on my books. I know years ago, I thought 6 and 8 stories was aggressive. You know, we have a lot of pieces to pull together. I'm glad the public came out and spoke their minds. So and it does have a lot of impact on neighborhood properties. When you go down 4 stories to build a basement, that's going to definitely have an impact. And infrastructure, our pipes are old on the main street. There's pipes on Holland Street that don't even, the sewer lines barely catch the town sewer lines, and they get backup. So when that main street is reconstructed, we have more challenges in the future to deal with. And parking, there's not enough parking now. I can't see the congestion in the future. We have a lot of issues to look at. The planners and this council has to continue to work on a better plan on the downtown. And there's a lot of work ahead of us before we approve any more buildings. Those are my comments. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you for those comments. I've got Councillor Harper next.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to staff and the proponent there for bringing their proposal forward. It was great to see the ambitions that they would like to propose to this town. Also like to thank my residents from Ward 6 and surrounding areas for coming out and voicing your opinions. These are what shape our community. One thing that's been quite obvious in this process, in this position, is that the planning part has changed, and intensification has now become our problem, but it wasn't our fault. But it is our responsibility to address this. So a lot of my colleagues mentioned that we need to find a solution instead of continue to build out and preserve agricultural farmland. The only feasible way to do that is to build up, but within reason. I mean, my colleague just talked about 6 to 8 stories 10 years ago seemed like a monstrosity of thing to, fathom. Well, imagine what, and I thank Wanda for being here, 1976 looked like, and they built a 4-story plaza that was, about 3 blocks long. So we've adapted, and we've figured it out. But we also do have challenges. We have challenges that this will create a lot more foot traffic, a lot more car traffic, because we are a commuter town. If you want to go anywhere, you got to drive somewhere. There's already actually issues at this intersection, which it's perplexing because, my colleague stole my point, and that's the problem about going last, I guess, is that, when you don't have that vision plan, because everyone touched on it, there's another development right across the street at 54 Holland Street that wants to build and take down that plaza. They've already been given their eviction notice in 5 years. So, that's going to be going up. But what does that look like? I've seen places where they put models of maps and things that are going to be developing and put in place. Plus, we have the revitalization. That's going to take away. Good thing we are working on our arterial roads to accept that so people can use those. Hopefully they do. I don't know if they will, Mr. Nosher, but we are trying to do what we can. But it's the challenge that we face. Will 6 be feasible? I don't think it is. But is 15 too much? It's quite possible that it is at this point for this town. But the OLT is not on our side. Not at all. I don't know how many times the last council faced a lot of those, OLT decisions. And some were facing this term as well for the other developers. Not on our side, but the idea that I have seen is that developers are listening to you. I've seen them come back with change plans. I've seen them actually listen to the questions and try to fit this into the neighborhood that we want to actually live in peace. And we are accepting of it, but we just need to have a better plan and better vision for all of us. There's some things in here that I'd like to address. The heritage houses. I know it has to go to the Heritage Committee. Could it be expanded? I've seen a couple of developments that I've worked on in construction that I do full time, where they've taken the fascia of buildings and expanded it to still kind of mirror or image the heritage that is there right now. Obviously, the structures that you see at those 73, 79, don't think they would sustain any of the vibrations from the construction right now. So I appreciate my colleague, representing that they would need to have some kind of like reformatting or refurbishing as well. The commercialized part of that with the parking, I believe that this is a great opportunity how many times I've walked and knocked on your doors and you're like, we need something downtown. This does present that commercial aspect for us to have something downtown. Do we want the 15 skyscraper behind it? Maybe not. I am, confident that the developer is going to listen and do his best to try and, give us some kind of adjustments that act reasonably or in fairness to dealing with intensification, density, but also the actual nature of this town, the heritage that it is established. We do need to find some kind of solution. I don't know what that is, but we need to have some kind of compromise and find a way to work through this together. The parking is definitely a concern. And we do have a transit system, but it's not an actual city transit. I think my colleague put it the better way there. It's not a city transit system, it's a town transit system, meaning it has gaps and usability issues to it, or user ability issues to it. It still runs quite adequately, and the staff do an amazing job with what we have. But if you look at this area, and I mentioned that we're a commuter town, there's no grocery store close to here. There's no other types of amenities. So if you really, there's great eateries there. There's lots of great restaurants, local businesses there. And I like that. But, sometimes you want to eat a little bit healthier, you want to change your diet up, or you have a specific, dietary need or whatnot. And you need to have these things. So in order to get there, you're going to have to drive. That's what I'm getting at. I don't see that changing for this town for another 10 years. Reason being is that we don't have the RCI to basically account for that. This is a residential town, 70% driven by residential or higher. So there's not enough industrial or commercial basically subsidized the offset of residential. So therefore, we keep building more residential. Well, where do people work? How do they afford to live? What kind of commodities are they going to be able to afford or keep? Well, they have to have jobs. Where are those jobs? There's not many in town, as much as we'd like. There's a great deal of jobs, and they're amazing, but it's not enough to sustain the population that we have here. And as ambitious as some people are or want to do better for their families, you can't hold that against them if they want to go outside the city or this town and find a job that can suit them at an economic rate to help them and their family and their children have better lives for the future. So I think we need to address this, parking, the streetwise, the other buildings that are going in the area. Some kind of issue needs to happen where we actually take accountability in the planning of this, or else we're just going to be picking and choosing little tiny spots that you can build there, you can build there, you can build there, and then somehow we're going to try to make it work. Well, my kids play Lego, and that's how that works. But, sometimes it works, but you have to use glue. So, and if you ever use Lego, then it breaks a lot. So I'd like us to go back to the developer with this, come up with some solutions, and I'm curious to hear some of the comments, the feedback from them, and for your questions, and hopefully we can actually come up with a compromise that works for our town moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. All right, I maybe just going to comment a little bit and give some clarity here. So council has addressed a strategic priority. We've done a strategic planning exercise, and if you look at within this report, 5.3, the attachment, it has your strategy set out there. It talks about your zoning, and it talks from 2 to 4, 4 to 6. All you can do is open it up. It's colored. It's colored there for you. 5.3. It talks about the area of the downtown. We just had a report from Go Services. We just included 11,000 new jobs from 2019 to 2024. It was just at our last council report. The key here is, folks, if you're going to create jobs, you've got to create residents. You've got to create a labor force. We, through the official plan of the county, scope of 7, are scheduled to grow at 85,000 people. My philosophy is intensification. We're doing it now. We're doing our new official plan. So we've got the county's official plan. We're looking at our official plan right now. addressing this so that we can find a way to grow to that 85,000 with bringing in, and the problem is you have to bring in 1,100 acres of farmland. A lot of council members sit here and say they want to protect farmland. Only two ways to do it. You've got to go through intensification. And we've increased our OP to go to 44% intensification. Instead of 40, we went to 44, which is 54 persons per hectare. In our master transportation plan for our transit node, we've extended that to 155 people per hectare. The reason being is you're in a transportation node. People will use transportation. We need to support transportation. If we want to put our buses on the road, which we're doing a new on-demand service starting April 1, this council has taken some initiatives to help with moving people around, and transit is a big one. That's what we want to do. We want to take cars off the road. So not that this, I commend people to come with these types of developments, looking at ways to do things. 15 stories is maybe something that is a little aggressive right now. But we will be looking at areas in the downtown core to intensify because there's opportunities for that. And we need to do that. We need to provide housing for everyone. Affordability, I've heard the word affordability. Affordability means so much to different people. Affordability has no actual meaning to it other than what your lifestyle is and what you make as a person, what your income is. So affordability is different to everybody. Whether this is affordable or not, it's going to be something that we build, and we're going to have areas where we can have maybe young kids, 20 to 30 years of age, moving out of their parents' house and moving into these one-bedroom suites to start. I always say to my kids, you don't start with a 2,500 square foot home. You start with a smaller one and you build equity into that, and you move yourself up through the system to buy into these 2,500 square foot homes. These are developments we're going to have to build whether we like it or not. We can't just sit here and say we're not going to grow. I'm sorry, that's just out of the picture, because we're at 92% residential tax with 8% ICI. The perfect scenario is a 60-40%. So 60% residential, 40% ICI. That's a great balance for taxation. This council and future councils will not be able to sit here and maintain your tax level at a rate that everybody says is already too high if we don't bring in these opportunities. These opportunities help us because we already have the pipe in the ground. We already have the infrastructure there. You take a 50-foot lot and you put a home on it. There's 50 feet of pipe in there. I'll tell you right now, it's $10,000 a meter. When you do the MPAC assessment, to replace that pipe in 30 years, we're taxing homes around the $10,000. That's expensive. When we do these types of intensification, we share that cost. We share that cost amongst those areas. So it's critical. If we want to save farmland, we've got to put some development in with this style of intensification. There's no decisions being made tonight, so we're just talking about what we have, what we are dealing with right now. I appreciate everybody coming out and giving those comments. Our staff will certainly note them. We'll go through the process, and we will then move, when it comes back to council, everybody notified. But I appreciate everybody coming and give those comments. I certainly have those types of concerns that everybody brought also. They will be addressed through the system. Councilor Kike.
Just commenting on that, this property is not in our major transit area at all. It's way out of it, okay? It is. It stops almost just right where Berry Street is, okay? We have a zoning bylaw that says 6 stories. And why do we even entertain this?
Councilor Kike, I'm not supporting anything.
Okay,
There's no decision being made tonight. I'm not going to
but
debate
also, I
this.
just want to comment on the fact that you said that we only have 8% ICI. This is not going to increase our ICI ratio. It's going to make it worse. So
I said you have to build a labor market to bring in your ICI. That's the key. You have to build a labor market. So there's no decisions being made tonight. We're hearing all comments. Staff will certainly. We will. No, it's closed down. Thank you. You can comment. We can comment right through to the end. So if there's more you want to say, please use email. Talk to our planning. They gave their email address. So please, if you have more to say, please say it. Not a problem. There's no decision being made. We're not supporting anything tonight. We talked about some of the concerns, and I've addressed some. I'm talking about the concerns also. I do have my concerns too. I will certainly comment through the process. So I'll go on and say, council will not make a decision on the matter tonight, but will receive a staff report for information. The matter will be referred back to staff for further recommendation report at a later date. So I have a recommendation. That report, PLN 25-7 regarding public information meeting, application for zoning bylaw amendment, file number D14-24-13 for the lands known as 23 Church Street, 73 and 79 Holland Street West be received, and the comments made at the public meeting and/or submitted in writing be received, and that the Office of Community Planning consider the matters raised and address the same in its recommendation report. Mover to seconder, please. By Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilor Ferragini. Questions or concerns? Seeing nothing, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right, we're moving. If there's some people that want to leave, I will give you a chance to leave, but if you're sticking around, we have a second planning application coming up right now. So if anybody's, I'll give you a few minutes to clear the, Council, you want a break? Couple minutes? Okay, so Council, let's take 5 then. If you don't, take 5 minutes to have a bathroom break. All right, folks, we're back for our second planning meeting, file number D09-2405 and D14-2414. So the planning staff will now present the contents of the planning report. Please note the staff report being presented by staff represents the town's initial proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. The presentation by staff will contain an update on comments received to date and does not include a recommendation on the proposal. Town staff will provide a report at a later date, which will also reflect and consider the public comments made during this public meeting and written submissions received before the report is written. I will now call up Madeline to give us a report. Thank you.
Good evening, Council and members of the public. Thank you for attending this evening's public meeting for the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 300 Berry Street. Next slide, please. I would like to start by providing an overview of tonight's presentation. I will discuss the purpose of the public meeting, introduce the application, discuss the public notice process, provide a detailed overview of the subject property and application, and share some concluding remarks and next steps. If you want to comment or receive notification as to when this file will be examined by Council again, please send an email to mluker@townofbwg.com. Please make sure to include your full name and municipal address in your email. Next slide, please. The purpose of tonight's public meeting is to introduce the applicant's proposal to Council and to the public and to invite questions and seek input. Once an application is deemed complete, the town is obligated under the Planning Act to hold a public meeting. Staff are in the process of completing a detailed review of the proposal, and Council will not make any decisions on the application tonight. The matter will be referred back to staff to consider the results of the public meeting and to review comments received through the circulation process. Staff will then report to Council with a recommendation at a later date once a comprehensive review has taken place. Next slide, please. The town has received applications for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment to facilitate the development of 445 residential units, 1,679.9 square meters of commercial space, and 811 parking spaces on the subject property. Applications for site plan approval have also been submitted in support of the proposal. The applications were submitted by Strogan Inc. on behalf of the owner, R. Chad Bradford Inc., and the applications were received on December 6, 2024, and deemed complete as of January 3rd, 2025. Next slide, please. Regarding the public notice procedure, signage was confirmed installed on the property on January 9th by the agent, and notice was placed in the online edition of Bradford Today on January 10th. As prescribed by the Planning Act, notice of the public meeting was mailed to all property owners assessed within 120 meters of the subject site on January 10th. Next slide, please. The subject lands is located southwest of the intersection of Berry Street and Line 8. The lands are currently vacant with the exception of some scattered vegetation, and the property is primarily surrounded by single detached dwellings to the north and west. Line 8 exists directly north of the property, and to the east is Berry Street, as well as a commercial plaza containing a grocery store, municipal offices, and other commercial and retail dining establishments. South of the property is town-owned open space consisting of a recreational trail. Next slide, please. The above image is the proposed site plan for the property. The plan consists of one mixed-use 10-story condominium building in the northeast portion of the lands, containing 1,679.9 square meters of commercial space on the ground floor. Of this commercial space, approximately 697.6 square meters would be fronting onto Line 8, and 982.7 square meters would be facing Berry Street. A total of 321 residential units on floors 2 through 10, and 262 units would be 1 bedroom, 40 would be 2 bedroom, 19 will be 3 bedroom, and 423 square meters of indoor amenity space, as well as rooftop amenity space. The plan also consists of 5 blocks of 4-story stacked townhomes in the southwest portion of the lands, containing a total of 124 units, 3 of the townhouse blocks would contain 24 units each, while the remaining 2 blocks would contain 20 and 32 units. 19 above-ground parking spaces are dedicated to visitor and commercial use, and 2 levels of underground parking are to be accessed from the south side of the mixed-use building. These would be dedicated to residents and visitors of the mixed-use building and contain 792 parking spaces. In total, the development contains 445 residential units, 811 parking spaces, and the site is to be accessed from 2 entrance points, one from Line 8 and the other from Berry Street. Next slide, please. For ease of reference, the above image is the proposed landscape plan for the property. This plan shows the mixed-use building and the townhouse blocks in purple. The mixed-use building is the L-shaped structure located at the bottom of the image, and the remaining purple blocks illustrate the proposed townhome blocks. Next slide, please. The above image is the proposed underground parking plan containing 792 parking spaces. Facing the screen, to the left is level 2 and to the right is level 1. Next slide, please. The following images are renderings for the proposed development. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Above is official plan mapping for the area. The subject property is outlined in black. The subject lands are located within the Bradford urban area and designated neighborhood commercial in the 2023 official plan. The neighborhood commercial designation supports retail and service commercial uses and residential uses provided they are compatible with the commercial use in mixed-use format located above the ground floor. The maximum height for buildings in this designation is 3 stories. Setbacks and heights for buildings and structures shall be compatible, have no adverse impacts on adjacent residential uses, buildings, structures, and lots, and commercial developments shall not exceed 2,500 square meters of net floor area. Because components of the applicant's proposal do not conform with select official plan policies for the neighborhood commercial designation, an application for official plan amendment is required. Next slide, please. Above is a map showing zoning for the subject site. The map identifies the property in a red outline. The subject property is zoned neighborhood commercial exception hold zone. The neighborhood commercial zone permits a variety of commercial retail uses such as a shopping center, business office, fitness center, medical office, restaurant, and retail store. Residential uses are limited to accessory dwellings, and the site-specific exception permits a motor vehicle gas bar and motor vehicle washing establishment. The holding provision requires that a development agreement be executed prior to development occurring on the lands. As the proposed development is not permitted as of right, a zoning bylaw amendment is required. Next slide, please. The official plan amendment proposes to add policies to section 4.2.4 of the town's official plan to permit an increase in the maximum number of stories permitted in the neighborhood commercial designation from 3 to 10 stories, and also to permit the mixed-use building and to permit the 4-story stacked townhomes. As discussed in an earlier slide, the neighborhood commercial designation supports residential uses provided they are located above the ground floor, and the maximum height permitted in this designation is 3 stories. Next slide, please. The requested zoning bylaw amendment proposes dual zones on the subject property. The northeast corner of the property, which is shown in blue on the map, would be rezoned from the neighborhood commercial exception hold zone to the neighborhood commercial exception zone to permit the mixed-use building. The southwest portion of the lands, which is shown in red, would be rezoned from the neighborhood commercial exception hold zone to the residential 2 exception zone to permit the stacked townhomes. Site-specific exceptions are proposed for both zones and relate to yard setbacks, lot area, frontage, building coverage, building height, and parking requirements, which I will discuss in further detail in the following slides. Next slide, please. Site-specific provisions proposed for the neighborhood commercial exception zone are illustrated in the above table. Requested site-specific provisions include permissions to allow for apartment dwellings, a reduction of 2.9 meters to the minimum required exterior side yard, an increase of 22.85 meters to the permitted height, and a reduction of 38 parking spaces to the minimum number of required parking spaces to permit the proposed mixed-use building. Next slide, please. Site-specific provisions for the residential 2 exception zone are also illustrated in the table shown. Requested site-specific provisions include an increase of 1.10 meters to the maximum height permitted for stacked townhomes, and a reduction of 108 parking spaces to the required number of parking spaces for stacked townhomes containing 8 or more dwelling units in one building or block. Next slide, please. The subject application was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for review on January 3rd, 2025. The following agencies and departments have indicated that they have no concerns or objections to date. Next slide, please. The following agencies and departments have provided comments or concerns regarding the application to date. The South Simcoe Police provided comments with respect to installing required infrastructure should the proposal interfere with radio transmissions. The town's deputy CAO provided comments regarding the date of Conservation Authority feedback included in the submission materials, the future form of the Line 8 and Berry Street intersection, and its impact on the site's entrance, as well as the potential need for improvements to the storm pond and a need for stormwater analysis. Bell and Rogers provided comments regarding conditions of approval to be included in a development agreement should the development be approved by council. The town's enforcement department indicated they were not in support of the proposed parking reduction. The town's natural heritage consultant indicated that additional work would be required with respect to the environmental impact study provided, proposed mitigation measures, as well as site-specific data to support compliance with applicable policies and acts. The town's landscape architect and arborist provided comments with respect to components of the landscape plan submitted and regarding tree planting and obtaining town permission to remove town trees and proposed tree species. Additionally, they noted that a number of trees which are on the shared lot line with the properties adjacent to the site would be damaged due to the construction of the underground parking lot. The town's accessibility coordinator provided comments with respect to the number of accessible parking spaces required, location of accessible parking spaces, pathways, and wayfinding throughout the site. The town's capital projects department provided comments regarding a future project regarding the replacement of box culverts that cross Berry Street and the need for the developer to coordinate with the town and the capital projects department as it relates to the design and construction timing. Additional commentary received in advance of this meeting includes the Simcoe County District School Board and Simcoe Muskoka District Catholic School Board, who did not object to the proposal, however provided comments regarding accommodation limits, student pickup locations, proposed sidewalks, and conditions to be included in a future development agreement should council approve the development. The town's fire department provided comments regarding access route, fire signage, and site servicing drawings. The town's infrastructure department provided comments regarding sewer main size and location of infrastructure in relation to the proposed retaining wall. Canada Post provided comments regarding the location of mailbox and mailbox requirements. The Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority provided technical review comments with respect to hydrology, engineering materials, and natural heritage due to the presence of a water feature on the site. And lastly, the town's finance department commented on the accounts receivable. Next slide, please. Public comments received to date include comments received from an F. Lozada of 29 Countryside Court, who provided comments in opposition to the proposal due to concerns regarding impacts on privacy of residents residing in the subdivision immediately adjacent to the subject site, consistency with the surrounding neighborhood's character, strain on existing municipal infrastructure, school system capacity, and public services, as well as the impact on the environment, existing green space, air quality, and noise levels. A G. Forbes provided comments in opposition to the proposal. However, address and reasons for opposition were not described further. An M. Azevedo provided comments following submission of the staff report and indicated their opposition to the proposal due to impacts on the existing community. Next slide, please. The Marks resident of 31 Countryside Court provided comments following submission of the staff report in opposition to the planning applications, expressing concerns regarding the increase in height and the impact on the existing neighborhood, impact of shadowing, particularly on properties located on Countryside Court, impact of dewatering and effects of altering the water table and potential for flooding on adjacent properties, impact on traffic and congestion at the Berry Street and Line 8 intersection, impact of the proposed retaining wall along the western property boundary on existing trees and loss of green space. Concerns were also expressed regarding the date of Conservation Authority feedback included in the submission materials, and the downstream impacts in terms of flood risk and impacts on the school system capacity, capacity of municipal infrastructure, and the design of the underground parking lot on adjacent residents, and whether or not adequate green space has been provided. Additional comments received came from A.K. Snyder of 22 Parkside Court, where concerns were expressed regarding impacts to the floodplain due to the proposed retaining wall and underground parking lot, increased traffic at the intersection of Line 8 and Berry Street, dewatering and flooding, and the impact of the height of the proposed mixed-use building. These public comments were shared with the applicant and owner prior to the meeting for their consideration. Next slide, please. I will now make some final remarks. Once an application is deemed complete, the town is obligated under the Planning Act to hold a public meeting. The purpose of the public meeting is to introduce the applicant's proposal to council and to members of the public, and to invite input and seek questions that will inform staff and council's consideration of the application. Staff have not completed a detailed review of the application, and council will not make any decisions on this matter tonight. At this point, the application will be referred back to staff for further review in order to consider the results of tonight's public meeting, to review comments received through the circulation process, and to evaluate the merits of this proposal. At a later date, once a comprehensive review has taken place, staff will report back to council with a recommendation. Until that point, public comments can be submitted. Next slide, please. To close, for members of the public who wish to comment or receive future notifications as to when this application will be considered by council again, please send an email to mluker@townofbwg.com. The owner's consultant is in attendance this evening to answer any questions that council may have on this application. And at this point, I would like to invite them to introduce themselves and add any comments. Following this, the floor will be open to questions from council. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Luker. All right, I will invite the proponent up, the applicant, if they'd like to add to the submission. Provide your names and
Good evening again, Your Worship, members of the Town Council, staff, and public. We're going to make this presentation probably like half time of the previous application, quite comprehensive, and thank you very much, town staff, for this application. And Greg Raspin is the brilliant architect who designed this project. Also is here in case any questions from the public or the council. So let's begin. Next slide, please. So this bird's eye view shows basically at scale the existing surrounding area with the North Bradford Square and the proposal on opposite side of Berry Street. As you see here, you can compare the size of the existing plaza and the subject property. They're almost the same. The volume of the commercial and retail building is a little bit bigger than the proposed on our side. And the rest of the plaza is taken by parking. So that was the way of designing on large properties, commercial properties like this back in, back 25, 20 years ago. So now we looked at this property from the overall perspective of the town, and basically this property is strategically located between recently introduced in the town so-called major transit station area to the south by Barrie and Bradford bypass. So very, very valuable piece of land, and size-wise, it's very rare piece of land because usually to achieve this type of density and this type of development, you need to combine several properties because all town is basically subdivided into smaller size properties. So we looked at this property from the perspective of course, of the proper development as a proper planning and architecture, but also from two perspectives. One would be to achieve consistency with, current changes in provincial legislation, and to assist the town in achieving the municipal housing target assigned by the province of 6,500 houses by 2031, and support the town's commitment to the federal housing accelerator funds. So that's basically on the town side. On the resident side, this presentation actually was designed and created with the residents of the Countryside Court and Parkside Court, mainly living along the cul-de-sacs, in mind. So basically this slide would show you that this development, as it looks like on this bird's eye view, is properly in place. It looks in the right place from this perspective. Next slide, please. As it was already mentioned, this property is located on the corner of Berry Street and 8th Line, and both roads are designated in the official plan as major arterial roads. Why it's important? Because the neighborhood commercial designation of this property in the official plan, one of the policies encourages residential uses above the first story, and an increase in height may be permitted at the intersection of an arterial and a collector road where a mixed-use development is proposed with residential uses. So that's exactly the case for this site. And instead of proposing a commercial plaza or commercial block at the back of the property with service road along the residential backyards and with all delivery truck parking and loading, unloading, and in addition to that, gas station and the car wash to the south of the property, and with all related nuisances from the commercial and gas station uses, we propose to remove the gas station and car wash uses from the permitted uses on this property, and instead to introduce more residential units on this site, and basically providing very clean and very efficient site plan. Next slide, please. So the official plan amendment basically addresses this intent, and the rezoning also deals with technical components of the current zoning to permit certain setbacks to form the public realm at the corner of these two arterial roads, and to create some meaningful pedestrian space and civil space along Berry Street and 8th line, just encouraging people for window shopping, for some relaxing, and then the central point of this development of this project is a large parquet in the middle of the property that would serve the visitors and the residents of this development. But we decided to locate mid-density residential, basically townhouses, on the west side of the private road proposed on this property, to provide some sort of transition area between this mixed-use, variable kind of island on this property with recreational, commercial, retail, and residential uses, just strictly peaceful residential pedestrian townhouses with lots of hard and soft landscaping. And the reason this is possible is because we decided to move all the traffic from the site underground. And I will explain later how it was achieved. Next slide, please. I didn't mention, sorry, could you get me back to the previous slide? So how we propose to deal with one of the concerns expressed by residents and neighbors. We received it at the beginning when we were preparing this presentation. We received comments only from 2 residents, and the major list of comments were received from F. Luzada of 29 Countryside Court. So basically, we are trying to address questions and issues, concerns that we received from these 2 residents. And first of all, how we propose to deal with increased traffic in the area. Number one, the landowner agreed to convey for public right-of-way widening at the intersection of the 2 roads, almost like more than a half acre of land. Total area of land conveyed to the public is 0.54 acres. So this land will facilitate the implementation of the recommendations of so-called environmental class, municipal class environmental assessment study that was completed in 2019, right before COVID, and those recommendations haven't been implemented yet. And with this addition of the land to road widening for use for public, the what is proposed by the environmental assessment would be achievable. Next slide, please. So this is one of the figures from the traffic impact study that was prepared for this development. So basically, what it describes 2 situations. The overall improvements to the roads and intersections in the area, and the proposed site accesses and how we're going to regulate them. So to eliminate most of the traffic on this site, we propose a limited access from 8th line. So this is right in, right out access. So only right turns will be permitted. What it means that basically there is no point going through this site to get somewhere, because there is no left turn from the site, no left turn on 8th line. So basically this site will remain mostly for residents and visitors of the plaza. And the second access to Berry Street proposed to be controlled by stop sign. So this has full right access, and it's aligned with the existing access to the plaza on opposite side of Berry Street. So again, drivers will have stay here, stop, and wait for a traffic gap to basically make a left turn here. And then if you see, and this is an answer to one of the comments we received later. For example, if you look at the different controls at different intersections, so you see the lowest gate is shown as closed here on this diagram, and then the intersection of North Gate with 8th line is signalized, so it's going to be implemented. And then the intersection of Berry Street and 8th line, as proposed by the environmental assessment, is controlled by 3-lane roundabout, this yellow circle here. So that's basically a combination of this site and the basically the overall traffic and road improvement in the area. Next slide, please. And the third measure that we propose, as I mentioned before, 2-level underground car parking is proposed with a single ramp near Berry Street site access. So basically what it means, no one has to go inside of the site and drive around or create some sort of a movement inside of the property. The ramp is located right at the entrance from Berry, so everyone will be going down underground and back again, and so the parking is connected to the rest of the building and the commercial spaces by elevators, by stairs, and so on. And this relates also to the townhouses on the west side of the private road. Next slide, please. We used the example of 29 Countryside Court because we received comments from this neighbor and prepared this section based on their property. Of course, the house is not mimicking the existing house, but scale-wise, it's all to scale. So basically, and for kind of better understanding, we put two figures, human figures. You see one at the porch of the existing house, and one in front of the stuck townhouses, so you could see what's going on. We didn't show any landscaping here, any trees, because they're being proposed, but we just wanted you to show space-wise, especially in vertical dimensions, how this property relates to the existing lots, the existing properties above on both courts. So next slide, please. So what mitigation measures are proposed based on this section that we just looked at? First of all, the grading plan that was prepared for this property requires retaining walls along the westerly and southerly property lines. And this is not because of the parking. The retaining wall is required because of the stormwater drainage designed on this site and because of the finished floor elevations throughout the site. The architect provided the finished floor elevations, and then the civil engineer, he followed these elevations and he designed the flow of the stormwater throughout the site, and the retaining walls were required to accommodate this flow. So as you see, in this case where this section was prepared, a 3-meter high retaining wall is proposed, and in addition to that, a wooden fence, an existing wooden fence, would be on top of the retaining wall. So basically, that would effectively block any view from the new neighborhood to the existing residential lots. Next slide, please. So the next measure to mitigate the impact of the proposed development on the existing residential community is a landscape buffer. So this is a very kind of preliminary conceptual landscape plan, but the soft and hard landscaping is proposed along the westerly property line, and as you see, it has only pedestrian walkway. That's all it has, and it has landscaping on both sides, and then entrances to townhouses. Next slide, please. And then the third measure that sort of also will mitigate the relationship and the impact, if you will, between the proposed townhouses and existing residential, stacked townhouses. So why stacked? Because if you know how they work, and I will briefly explain how they work because not everyone is familiar with this form of townhouses. These are two units, one above another, and both units have entrance from the same level. So to achieve this, the stairs are provided as a core for each unit. So basically what happens, to get to the entrance level, you have to climb half level up, and you would enter to the upper floor of the lower unit. So what happens to the lower floor of the unit? It's going to be halfway underground. That's why it looks like the lower floor is kind of not the full floor but half floor, and then the residents of the upper unit will enter at the same level to the stairs, and then we'll go up, and then the second unit will be on top of the previous one. So effectively, the townhouse has, instead of 4 floors, although technically it has 4 floors, but height-wise it has only 3.5 floors. The sort of portion on top, it's basically the exit from the stairwell to the roof. So that's all. It's not a unit. It's not a place livable place. It's just an exit to the roof. So, and that's why the height of the house is basically of the whole block is not higher but a little bit lower than the height of the houses with an existing subdivision. So basically, this would be the same condition if single-family residential lot would be backing onto the existing lot, and both houses would be equally looking into each other. So that's basically a situation like this, height-wise. So, and next slide, please. So what's going to happen throughout the site if we move from the countryside court down to Parkside Court? Because the site is going kind of down and the proposed grading is going down, you see that the townhouses at the south end of the property, they much lower than the townhouses towards 8th line. So you see extensive stairs moving, leading from the level of these townhouses up to the next terrace or level here. So again, this would provide, first of all, spatial variety and quite interesting locations with small parkettes in this area, quite safe, quite peaceful, and quite secluded locations. And at the same time, it's not going to look like, you know, one plain subdivision, but as a small town, basically. Next slide, please. And again, in terms of addressing the compatibility with existing neighborhoods, talking about the height of the buildings proposed here, right? We didn't know at the beginning what to propose because, you know, based on emotions, we could propose anything here. But we had two municipal tools to regulate and control the height of buildings, and we had one architectural technique to mitigate the impact, like visual impact. So the architectural technique could be explained by Greg, but I will simply say you probably saw the proposed elevations of the 10-story building, and it has some sort of terracing at every end of the building, which basically means that every 2 or 3 stories, a next level sort of backs up a little bit, and then another 3-story, and then it sets back again. So effectively, the outline of each next floor is a little bit smaller than the previous one. So a pedestrian or people on the ground, they don't feel that the building is too high or the wall is too high for them, because visually it's going to be 4-story. That's all, and then the rest would be hidden by the roof line. So, and two municipal tools that were used by the architect here is, one is called 45-degree angular plane, which is quite common tool in all municipalities in Ontario, and basically this 45-degree line.
I'm going to need you to step it up a little bit because. Yeah.
It's a last
get
one.
through it.
So basically it shows that all buildings are outside of this line. They're not encroaching into this angular plane. And secondly, sun shadow studies that also were conducted by the architect and guided by the town guidelines that show that the impact of the sun shadow is not really significant for this area. So that basically concludes the presentation. Thank you very much, and welcome your questions.
Thank you. Okay, so I will now turn to the public. So thank you very much for your presentation. I'll turn to the public. So members of the public are now invited to address council. So I do have a list here, and I'll start out with Marcio Marquez. You're first. But you'll get your turn. Public first. Oh.
We're getting pretty late in the evening. I don't know why we have 2 planning meetings on the same day. We really should give it to the public a proper time, so each one should have their own planning meeting. So my question is that in respect to the public who's here, is there an opportunity to have a follow-up meeting if we run out of time? I don't want to cut this short.
We won't run out of time.
Oh, is that a fact?
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you. Go ahead.
evening, Your Worship, Deputy Sandu, members of council, BWG staff, and all others in the room with us this evening, particularly those that I have personally spoken with that live along Countryside and Parkside about this proposal. Before I begin, I want to thank the town for providing the residents an opportunity to speak in front of you this evening, and also for all the folks on Countryside and Parkside that took the time to share their concerns with me. My name is Marcio Marks. Most of you already know me. I'm a generational resident of the town of Bradford. My family's been here for over 65 years. I myself only 39. I'm not that old. But I'm here today as a concerned resident of the town, specifically 31 Countryside Court, directly impacted by the proposed development and the zoning changes at 300 Berry Street, and to express my strong opposition to the proposed planning application that's been submitted for this property. While I'm not opposed to development in principle, I have significant concerns regarding the proposed zoning changes and the negative impact they will have on the community, as well as the surrounding environment. I have reviewed the public notice and all of the submitted documentation regarding this application for the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments by Arshad Bradford, and I have provided some of my comments and questions to the planning department on February the 6th. We'll start with zoning changes. My main concerns stem from the extreme zoning changes being proposed, particularly based on the current commercial zoning applied to the property. This is an extreme change that not only changes the intended purpose of the land, but also modifies the allowable building floors identified in the town's official plan and policies. We have seen the developer's request as presented by the town's planner. The request to modify the current zoning of the property and further amplify the allowable density by increasing building heights, which increases overall value of the property for the owner. The current official plan includes Schedule B1A for heights of buildings in the downtown core of Bradford. The maximum allowable stories is 10 and subjected to only 3 blocks of the Holland Street East, Dissette, and Bridge Marshview intersection. Other properties with a maximum building height of 8 stories are located between J Street and the GO station on the east and west sides of Dissette Street. This property specifically falls outside of the Holland Street corridor and therefore requires additional considerations and stipulations placed upon it. The town's official plan identifies a settlement area structure for residential built-up designations outside of the downtown area. The official plan identifies permitted uses under Section 4.1 residential, and furthermore in Section 4.1.4 high-density residential designations and 4.1.5 residential build-up designation. Item G states that lands that may be used for neighborhood commercial uses shall be subject to the following. Point 2, the following height shall be limited to 1 story unless residential apartments are located on the upper floors, in which case the maximum building height shall be compatible with the surrounding residential uses. That can be found on page 99 of the official plan, approved September 20th, 2022. By allowing these major changes, we set a precedence that this could be allowed anywhere in our town. These policies laid out in the official plan and zoning bylaws are in place to guide developers as to what is and is not allowed, and as such should be adhered to. Elevation and shadowing. The elevation of the high-rise building reaches a height higher than line 9 and Yonge Street. If you can place yourself at that intersection with the new set of lights, the elevation is higher. The elevation is completely out of scale with the surrounding neighborhood, and it drastically alters the character of our community. The visual impact as well as disruption of local aesthetics is concerning for current and future residents who appreciate the quiet and small-town nature of this area. Furthermore, a small shadow study appears on the architectural drawings, identifying an impact all year long to myself and the properties residing the cul-de-sacs along Parkside and Countryside. Not to mention it reaches Gardner, Bannerman, Line 8, and also down to Compton Crescent. Sorry, my bad. That's in behind No Frills to Turner Court. The urban design brief includes very minor verbiage to reinforce the shadow study completed, identifying the location and orientation of this 10-story building and 4-story back-to-back townhouses, having a minimizing impact on the adjacent sites. The proposed high-rise elevation is 282 0.75 meters. And based on the elevation data gathered from Google, Fletcher Street, which is up near the Lions Park, at Berry Street, sits at an elevation of 259 meters. That is a difference of more than 23 meters in elevation. Furthermore, the elevation of line 9 in Yonge Street is 279 meters. The elevation difference here is 3 meters higher. The building will be 3 meters higher than that intersection. And lastly, the elevation of the courts on Countryside and Parkside are the same. They're at about 250 meters, resulting in a difference of 32 meters. So that high-rise will be towering over everything around it. It's almost as if you've put a skyscraper in a fishbowl. The point I'm trying to make is that this building will appear as a skyscraper and does not blend with the small community around it, and will cause major shadowing of the community and the environment around it. Dewatering. Furthermore, I'm extremely concerned with the dewatering that we required for the development. As a longtime resident, I can attest, and my neighbors can too, that the property in question is essentially a swamp for most of the year. With water levels high during the wet season, the environment risks posed by altering the natural water table and potential for flooding and water flow disruptions have not been adequately addressed. The proposal does not adequately assess how this will affect the broader ecosystem and neighboring properties, especially in terms of drainage and water quality. What plans will be put in place to ensure the developer manages the dewatering process pre- and post-construction? We know that dewatering can cause ground to lose structural integrity, which causes ground settling. If the extent of settling is large, it can damage nearby buildings and structures. So I ask, what effect will the dewatering of this development have on our residents? Traffic. The traffic congestion in this area is another major concern. Line 8 has already reached unprecedented levels of traffic, and it continues to get more congested each year. The town's transportation master plan has identified the need to widen Line 8 from 2 to 4 lanes by 2031. But this upgrade will be insufficient to handle the increased traffic generated by the proposed development. Moreover, the intersection of Line 8 and Yonge Street, which is long overdue for an upgrade, cannot accommodate an influx of over 877 new residents proposed to this development. The improvements identified in the master plan are intended to accommodate existing traffic levels and future traffic levels to 2031 and do not include the additional strain that this proposed development would place on our town infrastructure. The current plan for Line 8 and Berry Street calls for turning lanes and not a roundabout, as was indicated by the consultant on the board above. Has the town transportation model been updated to include the increase of traffic from this development? That is a question I posed to the consultant and also to council. Retaining walls and trees. The proposal also includes a retaining wall along the property line from those that reside on Countryside and Parkside Court, extending from north to south, which will directly impact both my property and those of my neighbors. It appears that the retaining wall is proposed in order to lower the property so they can achieve a gradual elevation change from the west side of their property to the existing roadside on Berry Street. Myself, along with others in the area, have outdoor amenity features that would be directly impacted by this work. In particular, we have mature trees in our backyard, some that are over 30 years old, planted by my father, that would be lost as a result of this construction. These trees not only provide environmental benefits, but also contribute to the character of the area, our backyard, and provide privacy from the main roads. The loss of these green spaces and amenity features would be detrimental. LSRCA and storm sewers. Additionally, the developers provided an outdated LSRCA letter from 2014 for a commercial property rather than an updated review based on the current proposal. The developer has referenced this letter various times in their submission, including in the functional servicing report, which alludes to the new development rather than strictly commercial discussed in 2014. The development area is located in more than 60% within the floodplain, and it is unclear what the downstream implications of this would be, especially in terms of flood risk and environmental degradation. What measures are being taken to ensure that the development does not exacerbate flooding issues for the properties downstream? Schools. The impact on this development also extends beyond environmental infrastructure concerns. The existing schools in the town are already overcrowded, and the proposed development will only exacerbate this issue. A prime example includes one of the primary schools in Tottenham that my wife teaches at. They've had to remove the grade 7s and 8s from the school and bus them to a school in Beaton, 10 kilometers away. This is a result of not having the necessary infrastructure at the schools to support the number of student enrollments. We do not want this to occur in our town. How will the influx of new residents impact school enrollment in the area, and what plans are in place to accommodate the increase in student numbers? Sanitary sewers. The proposed development would put additional strain on the town's sanitary capacity. The sanitary report provided by the developer indicates that pipes flow downstream are already exceeding 85% capacity, and many pipes in the area lack the necessary capacity to handle any development, let alone a development of this size. What steps will be taken to address the sanitary drainage concerns and ensure that the existing infrastructure can accommodate the new development without compromising the service for current residents? What methods are in place to reduce the impact of traffic along Line 8 and Dissette and Wood Crescent if replacement of these sanitary sewers is required? And does the wastewater treatment plant have the capacity to handle these additional flows? And has any consideration been given to those properties along Line 8 and Dissette? How will their future developments tie into the existing and or the proposed sanitary sewers? Lastly, has the town's wastewater model been updated and an analysis been run to include this proposal and any future proposed developments along the Line 8 and Dissette corridor? Underground parking. Based on the footprint of the underground parking, it is unclear how it would ultimately be constructed without affecting the neighboring residents. During the project, there will be vibration and construction noise due to vibratory equipment, jackhammering, drilling, mechanical equipment, generators, etc. And with an overall depth of 10 meters, dewatering and construction will have a large impact on properties that reside around it. The developer is also proposing a deficiency of 146 parking spaces for their development. With this deficiency, we will see overflow of vehicles along Countryside and Parkside Court, and potentially even the no-frills parking lot. This will result in a direct impact to our neighborhood with an increase of vehicular and foot traffic, noise, and safety concerns for the residents. The developer's proposal includes the underground parking structure footprint extending to 1 meter from the property line on the entire site. How does this developer plan to construct the underground parking and footings to minimize the impact to residents? A simpler way to put it, how will the developer dig a hole 10 meters deep without affecting the private property of the residents on the cul-de-sac along Countryside and Parkside? Commercial parking and outdoor amenity space. The development looks to accommodate over 877 people. That's at a minimum, including bottom floor commercial space. There are insufficient parking spaces for commercial units or recreational green space for the proposed residents of this large community. How does the developer plan to accommodate the residents of this development in regards to this aspect? And in conclusion, while I recognize the need for development, I believe that the zoning changes proposed for this property are extreme and have not been adequately considered in terms of the impact of the community. I also ask why the developers requested to make all these major changes to their property. What initiated the developer to request the change from commercial to residential? And their proposal to build a high-rise, which is more than triple the height of what is set out in the town's official plan and zoning designations for properties that fall outside of the Holland Street and GO Station corridor. Furthermore, the request to build stacked townhouses 4 stories high as opposed to the 3 stories outlined in the criteria. Furthermore, I wanted to clarify some information that was up there from the consultant. And contrary to the developer's comments, the Line 8 EA was not approved in 2019. It was shelved in March of 2020 after the council meeting of February 2020, where the town was asked to revise the Line 8 plan, and is only now going out for a public information center meeting, the 4th meeting, in March of this year. Furthermore, to clarify, land requirements from the town for right-of-way widenings is specifically to allow for road widening as part of road designations. An example would be an arterial road requires 30 or 35 meters. Local roads, collector roads also have their own widening requirements based on the town's engineering design criteria. I strongly urge the planning department and council to carefully reconsider this proposal and to work with the community to explore alternatives that would allow for thoughtful and sustainable growth without compromising the quality of life for the residents, the standards set out in the zoning bylaws, the official plan, and the integrity of our town. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you for those comments. Appreciate that. And you're going to pass that to the clerks if it's your statement, you're going to, thanks. Perfect. Appreciate that. All right, I now have Shannon Isnor. Okay. That's a pretty hard act to follow. He pretty well covered everything. Okay, Frederico Lozada, sorry.
All right, good evening, Your Worship, members of the council, city staff, and fellow residents. I really appreciate all of you guys in here. There's not a whole lot to say after Marcio's thoughtful consideration of the project, but you know, I spent the last few weeks talking to my neighbors. We walked around. I gathered about 63 signatures of people that were strongly against this development. As Marcio stated, it puts a massive skyscraper in our neighborhood, neighborhood that, you know, very residential and very quiet and calm. I wrote some points, but then again, there's no point in going over all of this. We went as far as Northgate Drive, Compton Crescent, Fletcher Street. Again, several people indicated that A, they did not receive the letter from the town about the development, and B, that they were very concerned with it. There's a major fallback in a number of parking spaces, which we all know will end up in our streets, and parking is already very tight. There's also increased traffic of people trying to cut the main arteries to get to where they want. This is very common. All you need to do is go pick up your kid at St. Teresa to, you know, understand the massive disruption of traffic in that area when everybody's out. As Marcia said, is like to make it clear, we're, you know, most of us, we're not against the development. We understand that growth is inevitable and that our town will continue to expand. However, growth must be responsible, well planned, and aligned with the community's needs and vision. I first came to Bradford in 2003, and I fell in love with the small town aspect of it, and I chose to move back in here in 2019 to grow my four kids, and to give them, you know, a little bit of fresh air. We really appreciate and enjoy the smell of manure early in the summertime. And, you know, we're really grateful for, you know, the town to keeping that small residential feeling to it. It's a very small town. You know, again, it's a commuter town. We all need our cars. I live in Bradford, but I chose to commute very long way to Toronto to work, because I really like and I really wanted my kids to grow with that small town feeling. So I really appreciate your guys' support in maintaining the town as is. It looks like there's some sort of a trend in drawing a square and trying to fit as many things as possible in there, but I'm with Ben in there. I don't know why we're entertaining it, but I think it's just part of the process. So again, thank you very much. I really appreciate, and yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Okay, I now have, no, it's okay. Okay, I have Tony Nagy.
Good evening, councilors. Thanks for having this meeting tonight. I think everybody did an exceptional job, staff, the developer, in presenting a very clear vision of what they're proposing. Staff did a great job. I like seeing the official plan and the zoning that wasn't as part of the first presentation. No criticism there, I didn't mean to criticize that, but what I would have liked to seen is the overall official plan for the zoning throughout the town, because I think these kinds of proposals you're going to be challenged with over and over again if you don't have a vision. And you have a vision right now. I believe it's 6 stories, and somewhere else you got somewhere else. I don't know what it is, but it would have been nice to have seen it, because we would have been able to see where these anchor locations for the high rises could go. Namely, maybe across from the high school might be a more appropriate spot for it, and where we were supposed to get a shopping mall 40 years ago, I think. But I don't have a problem with I remember Ron Simpson argued for this to be commercial and for a convenience store, and I didn't know on top of it would be residential, but it's in keeping with the scale of our community. So the amendment seems to be a little aggressive, particularly everybody's going stacked, and that's high. I'm just looking at that development on Dissette, and to me it appears high. I've driven it. The developer did a great job trying to put in landscape buffers and hardscaping and softscaping. That wall at 4 meters is high. That's a high wall, and I don't know how you're going to soften that wall up. But and who owns it as far as maintaining it? I would think the development would. So really, the vision I think we have to put in place, especially with the downtown revitalization. What do we want? Where do we want these larger, higher development to go? Otherwise, you're going to get an ad hoc situation like we currently have. And I just really have a problem with the 10-story apartment building or whatever it is, because that's going to really increase. It doesn't serve too much of a purpose. I think those areas could be better suited closer to the GO station, or maybe as you're leaving town going towards the 400, perhaps maybe a little closer to the bypass. That's all I got to say, though.
Thank you. Give the comments, and I have Licinio Miguelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to commend Marcio for the amount of homework that he's done. I'm going to try and be as brief as possible and perhaps just elaborate a little bit on what he said. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address the chamber as it relates to the application to amend the town's existing plans for this property at the southwest corner of Barry Street and 8th Line. I've lived in Bradford for 37 years, and when I moved here, the population sign said just under 8,000 residents. And over the years, we've witnessed our community grow, and along with it, many new amenities and services for which we are grateful. Growth, development, and diversification for our community demonstrates progress, and you spoke to it earlier, Mr. Mayor. And it is beneficial for existing and new residents, even long-term residents like myself and generational residents that we've heard from all evening. But it's that way when it's done right, and it was done with the community in mind. When we purchased property on Parkside Court, we knew that the field behind the house would be eventually developed. In fact, given the manner in which the landowners, both the previous and the current, have maintained that site, and the lack of enforcement by the town on its husbandry and maintenance bylaws, we actually welcome the development. It's a bit of an eyesore. I'm sure you've driven by. I know in written correspondence and earlier today, Marcio has expressed reasonable concerns with the proposal to amend existing plans as it relates to infrastructure, privacy, access to amenities, tree canopy protection, the increased risk of flooding and sinkholes due to dewatering requirements, inadequate parking, and residential aesthetics, architectural aesthetics, and the list goes on. I'd like to focus my comments on this proposal, how it affects for those whom we're trying to build a better community. That's the youth and school capacity in this area. I know all of you here this evening are parents, and I know that everyone on council is either a parent or has been served as an elected official for our school boards. And you're well aware of the capacity issues that our schools in Bradford face. This proposal, which is not aligned with the existing official plan and zoning bylaws by epic proportions, asks for 445 units in this small parcel of land. For the sake of being conservative, and if we discount the 262 single-bedroom units, assume an average yield of 2 children per unit, that's approximately 386 new children going into this parcel of land and going into our schools. Even using the higher class size averages, that's 16 new classrooms worth of unplanned students. In a parcel of land less than 5 acres with this many units, one would be hard-pressed to split school boundaries. And I've reviewed the most recent enrollment numbers available from the Ministry of Education for the 2 closest elementary schools in the area. St. Teresa of Calcutta Catholic School has 460 students. Fred C. Cook Public School has 345 students. And to be clear, these numbers do not include the October 2024 enrollment, which would obviously have added to the pressure at those schools. That's a total existing enrollment of 805 students. This proposed development, adding 386 students, putting that into perspective, that's a 48% increase in enrollment to existing schools. Mr. Mayor and members of council, I'd like to encourage you to come visit these schools right now at arrival and dismissal time. Take a look at the enrollment pressures. Take a look at the traffic congestion. Come join us as we drop off. Where will these 386 children attend school? I fear it won't be just the townhouses that will be stacked to 4 stories. I think in an Ontario first, we're going to be stacking portables to 4 stories. That's just elementary school. Eventually, these children will need to attend secondary school. Both high schools in Bradford have a current enrollment of 2,395 students. And again, I go back to those numbers. We need 16 additional classrooms over those 4 years they attend school. Where do you intend these students to learn? Perhaps our new town hall can house them and we can bus them there. Just recently, on January 28th, the province announced new educational capital projects. 4 new school sites or expansions were identified in Simcoe County. A new high school in Wasaga Beach, and pardon me, I'm going to go through the list. A new elementary school in the southeast end of Barrie, a significant addition to an elementary school in New Tecumseh, and a significant addition to an elementary school in Aurelian. With so many schools in Bradford already bursting at the seams, there are 0 new pupil places added in Bradford in this round of announcements. Why? I suggest in part because no one was expecting this size of development. Official plan amendments of this magnitude being made on the whim of a new landowner don't result in additional pupil spaces within their time frame, if ever. Mr. Mayor and members of council, you've done an admirable job advocating to the school boards and to the province for the capital investment of new schools and additional pupil places in Bradford. We've seen it. But what we have seen is that new pupil places have been slow to come and not kept pace with development that actually has taken place and been in the books for years. Why would this then be accommodated? Should you approve this proposed amendment, which includes countless of unplanned new units, school crowding cannot be blamed on the school boards or the province. It will be a direct result of your decision to add an unplanned 48% to the existing student population to these new schools, to these existing schools. And with all due respect to the consultant and the developer, they will be long gone by the time our schools are completely overcrowded. It is of no concern to them what happens 4 years after they've completed this project. But ultimately, this decision lies with you. And you can be assured everyone in this room, and it's 10 o'clock and it's still full, and in the community will remember how you voted, whether you choose to vote to allow responsible and sustainable development aligned with pre-existing plans, or whether you side with the developer to fill their pockets on the small parcel of land and to grow the bureaucracy. I ask you to consider two very simple questions, both for this one and the previous one. What is the benefit of this proposal? And more importantly, who benefits from this proposal? As I mentioned earlier, this council has advocated strongly for BWG in the past, and we've benefited from the results of this advocacy. In particular, I'd like to highlight the Highway 404-400 link construction. I was a resident of Bradford before the amalgamation with West Gwillimbury. And it feels like I've been hearing about this highway construction since the day we moved here. Finally, it's under construction. The intersection where this development is set to take place is about to become one of the major gateways into our community. I'm not against development on that property. No one tonight has been. Much like other areas in BWG, we welcome it. But you have an opportunity to demand from the developer a showcase proposal that demonstrates the many quality attributes that our community has to offer. A quality landmark development that welcomes visitors and residents to our town. Mr. Mayor, you spoke of employment and increasing ICI. This is a great spot for higher order employment, not convenience stores, not dry cleaners. Or you can go with the option presented before you that tells the world we're okay with ramming through any development application that comes our way, regardless of the needs of our community. I hope you choose to continue being advocates for our community. And the last comment I will make is more about the legacy that you can leave as leaders in our municipality. It's about our identity as a community, that you as 9 individuals, 7 this evening, get the privilege to shape. What do you stand for? Is this why you originally ran for council? Was it really to approve these cookie cutter developments, stack as many units as possible on the small piece of land? Or was it to make a difference, to make BWG better than when you arrived? Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for your time.
Thank you for those comments. All right, I'll make a last call for anybody that wants to speak on behalf of this proposal. Thank you so much to the speakers that did come up. I really appreciate the comments. Well done. Go ahead. Just state your name.
Yeah, Mike Fascio, 2 Countryside Court. Just a couple of questions since we've got time. Thank you. I'm concerned about the setback for the entrance from the 8th line that's being proposed. I had other concerns, but there's a lot of questions that were answered. We're proposing over 400 parking spaces, is my understanding, which means during rush hour, most of these people are going to be trying to leave this property, which logically tells me they're going to try and get up to the Bradford bypass once that opens. So it gives me a good perspective of how many cars are going to skip lanes, because it doesn't seem like there's enough of a setback from the 8th line from that intersection. It's nice to know. I can kind of guess how many people are going to cut me off on my way to work. I don't think it's feasible to put that many residents on one block. That it seems like a nightmare as far as traffic is going to go. And we've got a light now, and I'm really hoping it doesn't go to one of those roundabouts. That's another concern I have. We've got a light now that's got staggered lights, and to me that implies we've got traffic issues already with residents coming down, bypassing Bradford through Innisfil. I don't see how this works. It doesn't seem like there's enough of a setback for vehicles to turn right on the 8th line, especially with, whenever it happens, a proposed widening of the 8th line. They're going to skip 2 lanes to get into the turning lane to go north with, what, 100 meters of setback? It doesn't make sense to me. I did have concerns about drainage, but it seems like we're going to be putting that on the new residents if this happens, because there's going to be, essentially they're helping with drainage, because that wetland is going to be now, what, a 10, 12-foot pit with a retaining wall. So, I mean, that's going to be their problem later, because the developer's not going to care after the fact. The hospital thing, the school thing, I see great concerns with it. We are overflowing at our schools right now, and I don't know what the plans are to add schooling. Pickup drop-off is a massive area. My neighbors did a great job bringing up all these issues. I don't see answers to a lot of the questions. Everything looks nice on a slideshow. It just doesn't seem to work, and it doesn't seem to work there. And the fact that everybody's going to be using these two major roads, which I quote the presenters in saying these are major arterial roads that have traffic issues to begin with, and we're going to dump that many cars coming during the morning rush, during the evening rush. They're just going to create a disaster at that intersection. I don't see how that works. I was also under the impression that there's going to be parking coming from, or sorry, the parking garage is going to be coming from the Barry side, Barry Street side. How does that work? Is that going to be off to their main road and out to Barry, or is that going to be essentially like a parking garage where there's inflow going in from Barry right into the parking garage? Because I could tell you straight out, that many vehicles coming out in rush hour, people won't stop. People are going to be more concerned with getting out on the road because there's a lineup on a ramp behind them. So I'm kind of wondering how that's going to work too. So, I mean, all the concerns with my neighbors is valid. There's a lot of questions. Doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of answers. Yes, we have to build up. Yes, we have to build. Are we prepared for it in this area? Because once we approve this, we can't go back. So, I mean, this is a decision you guys have to make that unfortunately we have to live with. So I'm hoping there's just a thought process or a long thought process involved in this. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much for those comments. Further comments from last call? Okay, seeing none right now, then we will. Planning staff, do you have any reply to any of these concerns that were brought forward? It's time.
First off, I just wanted to echo Priscilla's comment that she made in response to her presentation and the public comments. It's really nice to see this much public participation. So thank you all members of the public for attending this evening. Further to that, I'd like to note, as she did, that staff have been taking notes throughout this presentation and the entirety of this public meeting. And we'll certainly address these comments in a future staff report to council. I will try to address some of the comments or questions that have been provided from members of the public. And there's been many portions of great feedback. In response to concerns regarding flooding, I am no engineer. However, I'd like to assure you that the applications have been circulated to the LSRCA, so the Conservation Authority, and our Development Engineering Department is in process of reviewing the applications, and they would be the experts that we rely on for comments with respect to flooding, dewatering, things that members of the public have already mentioned. I know that one of the questions was regarding updates to the transportation master plan to accommodate the increased traffic as a result. That one I will have to look into and provide a reply back to members of the public, as I don't have the answer to that right now. I know there was a lot of questions regarding the impact on existing municipal infrastructure. Again, I'm not an engineer. I don't work in our wastewater department or our water department. That being said, we do circulate applications to many other departments within the town, and we have received some feedback from them as well. And again, Development Engineering will be reviewing these applications in that regard. I know there was a lot of concerns regarding the number of parking spaces. So just to echo what I've said earlier, planning staff are still doing a detailed review of these applications. It's not been complete yet. Again, we rely on the expertise of our Development Engineering Department to review the traffic impact study as well and to provide commentary in that respect. I know there was a question regarding where higher densities can be placed in the town, and I believe one of the members of the public did reference the correct schedule. So With respect to heights in downtown Bradford, that would be Schedule B1A to the official plan, heights in downtown Bradford. And if the member of the public that was requesting that schedule would like to email me or get in touch with any member of our planning department, we can certainly link you to that schedule. To clarify, this property is not part of downtown Bradford. However, if you are interested in seeing the heights that are proposed along Holland Street, for example, that's a good schedule to reference. I know there's been a lot of concerns regarding capacity of schools, and again, we do send these applications to school boards for their comment. We have received comments from 2 school boards at this time. The final question that I will try to answer, so again, questions regarding the side yard setback, exterior side yard setback along Berry Street. That's captured as part of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, and again, staff will review this when we've completed our detailed review. And all of these comments and questions from council and members of the public will be considered as part of that review, and they will also be captured as part of a recommendation report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I will now turn over to council for questions. So we'll go right around the table here. Councilor Giordano, then Councilor Perugini.
Awesome, thanks. I just want to first off by apologizing to everybody here. I'm sorry that we're going so late. Again, there's 2 back-to-back, so because it's a contentious issue where there's a lot of feedback, it takes a lot of time, but I'm glad we're extending the time to allow for it. Would have been better on a different day though. So let me just kind of talk about some of the stuff. So one thing, it's kind of, I'm being a little cheeky here, but I'm kind of offended that some people use the term skyscraper for a mid-rise or a low-rise. But if it was in my backyard, I'd be using the same words. So I do appreciate it. Because we build sky rises and they're much taller. Now, the next thing, is the deputy CAO, he's in charge of growth, or our CAO explain? I'm a little bit confused. When these applications come forward, and the residents that have been speaking have given us fantastic information, but do we not consult or give that to, like the amount of holes that were punched in this outdated traffic plans, and all these other, this is something that should have been at least consulted with before it came to us. Should have not, before it goes to a public meeting, or can they just do whatever they want and then it's up to us after the fact?
Well, let's clear some air here.
Yeah.
Alan, come on up and explain the process so that everybody understands the process. That's really what it's all about. Council we've got some deadlines to meet.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Giordano. So for a bit of background, this proposal had gone through formal pre-consultation with the town. That process generally involved circulating the application to all those internal and external folks who would be doing the peer review of the wide range of studies. At the point where the property owner had completed all those studies and made the submission to the town, and the applications were deemed complete, that kicked off the public notification and engagement process, and that precedes the department and agency peer review of all those materials. So we don't do a qualitative review prior to scheduling the public meeting. As Madeline had outlined in her presentation, we have received feedback from a wide range of those folks. But what brings us here today would be the pursuit of public feedback and feedback from council on the proposal. The reference to those comments is somewhat of an add-on for council and the community's reference at this point.
Kind of clarity on the process?
No, I understand. It's more for everybody to hear and understand. So this is one of the issues I have. When there's a development that needs to go forward and you're trying to push the boundaries or do things that are over and above or outside the guidelines, generally you'd want to work and nail it the first time, right? So that's why I was a little bit confused, because I just wanted to know how involved you were. So that was thank you for answering that. So the next thing too is when I look at the No Frills Plaza and everything else across the street, to me, again, I think one of the other residents brought it up as well. This is a bit of a gateway, especially with the bypass coming in. Having a high density complex right there, although very convenient, I guess, it doesn't benefit the community. And again, I look at if I was to, build a model of what I want Bradford to look like, basically they were saying you can have a gas bar with a, what was it? Gas bar with a car wash, or you can have this. Well, I don't want either. Putting a mass, I think there's a better opportunity for that space personally. The mass underground parking garage, like a genius design, it works fantastic. They've been using it in like North York, Brampton, Mississauga, a lot of places like that. It's I do commend the architect because they did maximize every square meter of that property. My concern is number one is how do you prevent drug addicts or nefarious acts taking place in underground parking garages that large? And then it's up to, I guess, property management after the fact, but does it have a gating system? And if it has a gating system, does that prevent backups onto those roads? So that's an issue that I have with that. The safety issue for women and youth or just people in general in underground parking garages are always a concern of mine. You can only put so many cameras, but again, we don't really have anything like that in Bradford. So once you start putting in something like that, there's a lot of mitigation that needs to go in. So I haven't heard anything about that yet. And then I gotta kind of call it like it is, like stacked townhomes. The way they're positioned, it's a mini apartment is what it is. So it's not, and I love the design concept and how you explained how they get access to it. It works great, but again, that's just jamming density down. And I know that some people really want to jam density here in Bradford. I'm not a fan of jamming density. I don't care about hitting any mandates. What I care about is what the community is all about. So I would like to see some softening of the project, in multiple different areas, whether it's the levels, we don't have enough parking, all that stuff. At the end of the day, I still think that this is a better suited position for a premium commercial space. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilor Ferragini.
Thank you. Mr. Marks said everything that I had planned for tonight. So I've got just a couple of little things to touch on. I know everybody's been here late and we all want to go home. So I don't want to take forever here. I just want to touch similar points that I made in the previous, to the previous presentation, and even the comments that are coming through from our staff, the deputy CAO with the comments respect to the date of the, to the LSRCA. And in regards to the water situation in this area and the floodplain, it'll be really interesting to see a hydrological report on this and how that's going to actually be worked with. Also, the impact that this proposed entrance is for the site on the intersection, especially the gentleman who brought up the underground parking and where the entrance is planned to be right on Berry Street. Same idea. I was looking at that, like, how is that possibly going to work with the amount of cars that you'd be dealing with in here? The parking issue, BWG enforcement's completely against the relief of the parking, and we understand why, because we've seen it all around town. I'm in agreement with them. Similar to the last project, I just feel that it's extremely aggressive. We're outside of the official plan. We worked very hard on the previous official plan, and we've been trying to stick to that. Now we're looking at a new official plan for the future, but that's not what we're dealing with in this area. There's a 3-story max on this property with the neighborhood commercial zoning. I was looking forward to a nice commercial plot here because we need something on that side of town. With the No Frills Plaza as it stands, that place is always packed. It's always busy. And if you start getting overflow of people into that parking lot, you're kind of screwing up that whole area. It'd be nice to actually have a properly done commercial piece instead of just having, hey, here's some commercial on the bottom, and we're going to slam as many residential homes in there. My colleague actually stated it before. I'm not about these mandates that have been made, and I'm about creating communities. I want our community actually, what is being built is you're going to be proud of living there, and you want what is being put in your backyard. We talk about the not in my backyard attitude. I get it. We know that growth has to happen. I get it. But at the same time, it has to be responsible, and we have to respect the people that already live there.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Councilor Kike.
Yeah, I'd like to echo a lot of what's been said already, and getting late, I won't repeat any of it. I just some highlights. Again, I'm against going 250% of what the existing zoning bylaw states. 3-story, 10 stories out of 3 stories. Again, parking, it's better than the Holland Street proposal, but it's still really lacking for the back townhomes. And the commercial part of it is a big concern to me because I don't see a lot of street level parking for that commercial area. And if you drive on Dissette Street now at that new place, you see all these for lease and for sale signs. I don't see any commercial open. I don't foresee any commercial. It's just a failure because it's bad enough if I want to go to the jewelry store, there's only a couple of parking spots there, but at least I can park and go in. But I don't get that. I just don't get it. You can't have retail without parking. So it's just going to be a bunch of empty spaces.
Thank you for that. I've got Councillor Harper and then Councillor Dykey.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you to the planning department and to developers and the architects for bringing this presentation. I want to say thank you again to the residents for coming out and during such a long evening for having 2 planning meetings. Not normally what we do, but I do understand that we do have timelines that we have to try to meet in regards to the provincial mandates that have been given to us. First off, line 8, Berry Street, there is no roundabout there. Let's clear that area out right now. You guys remember that one? The school thing. Okay, the problem with the schools has existed long before this development was made. And I have emphasized with the resident creating the mock scenario of more children coming in. So that's we have a provincial election coming up. So I strongly urge you guys to bring these concerns up to these elected MPP candidates. They're the regulatory body overseeing schools, and us in the municipal level, we have been aggressively advocating for schools. And I appreciate you, recognizing that we have been doing such a great advocacy for that. We will continue to do that. No matter what growth comes, we're already still behind, so we're not going to stop pushing the pedal on them to keep fighting for those schools. And I know we do have another one coming up over in Dreamfields that's being built next year, so that's a great bonus. High school talks, stuff like that. We're not going to stop doing that. Regards to the mixed zoning, I wouldn't mind having a commercial residential mix here, but not sure about the height. There's a lot of still concerns, and the reason for that is that all those services that were asked, there's still a lot of feedback that needs to be given and a lot of information that still needs to come to us. So maybe there's a lot of softening that needs to go there. My other concern was that although the architect did a great job explaining retaining wall, 4 meter high, the pedestrian walkway, and using that as a setback, normally we do have a cushioning from existing residential detached into new developments that have a nice kind of setback. I'm still not sold on the stacked or as many stacked townhomes in here based on what was mentioned about the recreational and green space. There's no transition at all that talks about the actual green space that backs onto Bill Marks Trail. There's no transition there. I'd like to see I feel that those townhomes basically density the crap out of the area. And we don't need to do that much. So maybe there's some softening there, and maybe that will actually, transition nicely better into the surrounding whole huge trail that we have that we just renovated over last fall. And that might tie in better to the community. There is a lot of growth, and like I said before, there is some kind of compromise here. And I hear that you guys, or sorry, the residents, you're not opposed to growth or something to go there. We understand that something may have to go there. What does that look like? Again, let's make some kind of compromise to figure what that is. But there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered here. Yeah. First, one more note here. So the other part was the zoning for the townhomes. Maybe there's some other type of environmental impact here that we should be getting. I know we haven't received a lot of feedback in regards to the flooding and the dewatering, which has been really reiterated a couple times. But I do have faith that our engineers will address this. And it's not supposed to just look at this portion of the land, but we've seen this in other areas that have come up through my term here, is that, you know, when we build something on one area, does it have any adverse effects to all the other areas or residents there? And I feel that that's a concern here. So that should be addressed in regards to the study. So what does the runoff effect have towards some of the residents around the area? And that should help. Or is there a stormwater plan in regards to that needs to be addressed as well? Those are my questions that I'd like to hear about. But, you know, I know that the developer put great efforts in to try to address some of the questions that were addressed beforehand. That's actually something I haven't seen yet. So thank you for doing that. I know there's still some more work that needs to be done here. And if that's not a sign that they're willing to work with us, hopefully that can be promising to the future of this area. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to answer? Is there any opportunity? No. Okay. So, Councillor Dickey.
Well, I have a lot to say about this site. I've seen the site get developed from the get-go. We had a proposal for a medical building that came before council, or was sketched down by a local doctor. We had a commercial site, gas station, Tim Hortons. I actually know the owner that had his name on the list to accomplish a Tim Hortons on that site. At the end of the day, I think this is too aggressive for that particular corner. I always respected the park side and the countryside. There's some beautiful homes and it's a beautiful neighborhood. The residents have some nice lots, and I sure don't want to see this high density development affect their quality of life that they had for the last 20, 30 years. And I think there's some potential to develop that site for a commercial, but when it comes to the high water table, I question the quality of retention pond, whatever that was built years ago. You know, I'm embarrassed to say that I don't think the town has done a great job in forcing the developers and the owners of the land to maintain that property, because you look at what's there, there should have been a better management when it came to maintaining that corner, since that's a gateway to coming into our community. So I have a lot more to say, but tonight was just a public meeting, and you know, we heard the residents. You all did a great job on your presentation tonight. There was a lot of valuable information as you, the residents, came forward, and I'm looking forward to see how staff manages this forward. I know, you know, we need higher density, but there's other areas of this municipality that this can take place and blend better than that particular corner. That's just my opinion, but I'd like to see a commercial. We do need more commercial, and that brings tax dollars when it comes to commercial. So those are my comments. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Ms. Luker, thank you. Consultants, applicant, thank you, and especially residents. The way the proposal is, I can't support it right now. Doesn't mean I'm against the development. I would like to see that area developed, and I think every resident that spoke did say that they're not against developing that area. It just has to be smart. It has to be considering all the concerns that were brought up. Some of the ones that I have, I feel that it's too many units in that area. The parking, 811 parking spots. And what I heard when you were presenting, you said the access to the garage, parking garage, will be through Berry Street entrance. Berry Street is already busy, and it's gonna add more to it. I did not see any, and not to add, that's also this development's gonna add traffic to line 8 and Berry, and then to have an entrance to go to garage and come out is gonna create more traffic jams. And also, we heard about the schools, whether the schools are built or not, the kids, the children gonna have to go to some school, whether it's portables or not. And if it's school buses, when they come to pick up the kids or drop off the kids, they're going to be blocking off traffic because you're not going to have a bus turn into your development. That's a concern for me. I did not see any park amenities, even though I see some green space in there. That's not considered. If you're putting that kind of a development, what park amenities are you considering to put in or should be considering to put in? We heard about the height concerns. Yeah, they're too high for me, I think. And the dewatering and the flooding concerns. There's lots of concerns, valid concerns that were brought up. I hope you work with our staff and address those concerns, and when the staff report comes back, that if not all of them, almost 90 to 95% are addressed. And then it would be a good development. Otherwise, it's just lumped in, and it's not going to work for me sitting at this table. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And all great comments, and I want to thank the residents for staying here this late. I know it's late at night. The issue is we have time constraints. We have a complete application. We have to deliver these things to you through this open process. Otherwise, we put ourselves in a position where they can take us what we call the Ontario Land Tribunal, and we don't want to do that because we don't control that system. So best bet is to have these open houses. I know it's late, and I'm sorry that we have to do two, but because we have, again, these constraints, we have to meet the Planning Act, we have to do some of these, and we're going to be pressed to do a few of these over the next little while because we have all those applications coming in. Thanks, staff. Thank you all for being here. The developers, thank you. I mean, great articulation by the residents. We appreciate that. We hear it. We will do our best when it comes down to dealing with these issues. So I'm going to, council will not make a decision on the matter tonight, but will receive the staff report for information. The matter will be referred back to staff for further recommendation report at a later date. Recommendation that report PLN 2025-2 regarding public information meeting applications for zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment 300 Berry Street file D092405, D142414 for the lands municipally described as 300 Berry Street be received, and the comments received in writing and or made at the public meeting be received, and the Office of the Community Planning consider the matters raised and address the same in its recommendation report. Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilor Ferragini. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So it is recommended that all comments or questions on the planning applications be submitted in writing to planninginfo@townofbwg.com. You also had the planners, they put their information up there, the direct planners for each application. But if you send it to planninginfo at the town of Bradford, Gwillimbury, we will receive it, we will deal with it. Written submissions are not required at a public meeting, but can be made at a later date and will be accepted up to the date the council makes a decision on the matter. So nothing's closed. You can still comment more further on these developments as we move through them. When written submissions on planning matters will not be read at the council meeting, but will be forwarded to the planning staff for consideration and or response. Council will be apprised of all public comments received prior to making a decision on the application. If you wish to receive information on specific planning applications or to be notified of an upcoming meeting related to the planning matter, please email planning@townofbwg.com. I know you all signed it here. You've checkmarked it, but if you forgot to sign these, please don't worry. Send it to planninginfo@townofbwg for further comments. All right, confirm proceedings. Recommendation of the bylaw 25-18, a bylaw to confirm proceedings of the council meeting dated February 11, 2025 be enacted. Moved by Councillor Harper, seconded by Councillor Dykey. All in favor? Carried. Adjournment. Recommendation of the meeting hereby adjourn at what time is it? 10:31. Moved by Deputy Mayor and Councillor Kike. All in favor? Carried. Again, thank you so much for spending time with us. I know it's a late night, but we appreciate that. Thank you. Have a great night.